Good evening, everyone. We are going to call tonight's meeting to order. That's me being noisy. There we go. We are going to start with the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Councillor Sherwood and Councillor McIntosh. Questions or comments on the agenda? All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we had no closed session today, so we're moving straight into our open session, and we will begin with the singing of the national anthem. So please rise if you are able.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We would like to acknowledge that the treaty lands and territories of the Williams Treaty Nations and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We also recognize that Dufferin County is the traditional territory of the Wendat and the Haudenosaunee and is home to many Indigenous people today. Tonight's meeting is being aired on public television and or streamed live and may be taped for later public broadcast or webcast. Your name is part of the public record and will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Any member of the public connecting via telephone is reminded to press *6 to mute and unmute. Please remain muted until the chair requests comments or questions from the public. Tonight, we have no rise and report. We have no adoption of minutes of previous council meetings. We are going to go straight into presentations. I just wanted to give a little bit of an overview on how tonight is going to work. Tonight, we are dealing solely with the capital budget. The thought is that we will get through all of the presentation. We have a few speakers. We'll get through everybody's presentations, and we will turn it over to council for questions following that. Once we've gotten to the point that we finish those, we'll move into the consent agenda, which we don't have one, and then we'll move into public question period. The hope is that hopefully by the end of tonight, we can at least approve the capital portion of the budget. If not, we'll wrap up the meeting and we'll come back and talk about it at our next budget meeting, but hopefully we can get the capital portion wrapped up tonight. So I will start first with a presentation by our CAO, David Smith, who's going to introduce the budget. I will turn it over to you, CAO Smith.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate that introduction, and good evening, members of council and the public. It is Monday and it is budget. The stars have aligned. Some of you will appreciate that because my favorite day of the week is Monday. The budget before you is responsible, and equally important is reasonable. It is well thought out and accomplishes critical objectives. Staff have invested a lot of effort into crafting something we stand behind. We did not bring something inflated, expecting it to be cut and hoping it lands where we need. That's not our style. It's not my style. It is where it needs to be, and we trust that council will agree with that approach. Of every tax dollar a resident pays in Ontario, tax of any kind, 47 cents goes to the federal government, 44 cents goes to the province, and only 9 cents comes to the municipal government. Yet we are responsible for more than half of the infrastructure in Ontario. If taxes are too high, more work needs to be done at the federal and provincial levels. Taxes and regular tax increases are necessary. They support services and allow for investments to support our most vulnerable. Public funding creates safe and livable communities. We know that the vast majority of people in Orangeville can pay their taxes. With their support, we can offer services like free transit and subsidized recreation programs. We also know and appreciate that there are some homeowners who are challenged by any level of taxation. Fortunately, this is a very small minority. Regular tax increases smooth out the impact and create opportunity. When we know there is a huge gap in our infrastructure funding, anything less than inflation is increasing the gap. And I won't comment tonight about the difference between consumer inflation and municipal inflation. For the capital budget, and that is the focus tonight, we're starting to scratch the surface at what really should be invested. You will see soon our infrastructure shortfall is about $5 million a year. And what does that mean for residents? It means we have sidewalks in disrepair. It means we have a stormwater system that was last reviewed in 1984. It means roads prematurely fail, which leads to expensive replacement because we can't afford to perform all the required preventative maintenance to maximize their longevity and keep costs in check. It means our buses are prone to breaking down. It means that a water tower built over 30 years ago has never been shut down for maintenance. These are real impacts in our community. They impact us every single day. But it's not all doom and gloom, and we are not alone. Every municipality in Ontario has many of the same challenges. Through the mayor's leadership and working with your colleagues at FCM, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, municipal tax reform needs to occur across the country. By educating, working collaboratively, and gaining support from our residents, there will be increased acknowledgement that there is a fair price to pay for the community we desire to be. We're not there yet, but across the province, we are on the way. We can't afford to fix everything. No municipality can, but we can work towards better maintaining the most critical assets and closing the funding gap. Our overall budget includes increased investments in sidewalks, investments in roads, and investments in our capital reserves. It moves us along the path to self-sufficiency and recognizes the true cost of living in this wonderful community in the best province in the country. It is bold to approve a 4.5% tax increase, and it's the right kind of bold. Many communities are passing budgets as we speak in the 5 to 8% range, many higher than that. They are recognizing and coming to grips with the reality of significantly increased costs and service expectations, and also, importantly, deciding not to push current liabilities forward. That approach doesn't serve anyone well. Council, your leadership tonight and tomorrow starts a new chapter in our future. We're looking forward to that chapter. And we're looking forward to the bright future that Orangeville has. I'm keen to turn over the agenda to Patrick Kelly. I want to thank Patrick and his team, Mandeep, Rebecca, and Rocky, for the excellent work they have done to get us here so far. Through their leadership, advice, and smarts, the senior leadership team was able to turn an original 19% draft budget into tonight's 4.5% one. I'll turn it over to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and through you, Mayor Post. Welcome everyone to tonight's capital budget meeting, as has been referenced. The capital program is just one component of the consolidated budget. The town, as our CAO has indicated, is challenged like every municipality is right now, trying to find ways to balance our short-term operating obligations with long-term investments in both public amenities and critical infrastructure assets. This evening, we'll focus our deliberations on the proposed 2024 capital program and endorsement of the 10-year capital forecast. Our goal from tonight is to build a long-term sustainable capital program that meets the strategic goals of the community while focusing on best practices in asset management, notably evidence-based decision-making. Ultimately, that will lead the town to be making the right investments in the right infrastructure at the right time. Just a quick update again as to where we are in this process. So we are inching closer and closer to the end of the budget process, but lots of important conversations tonight and tomorrow night as we seek formal approval of the budget. So for tonight's agenda, I wanted to run through what the presentation will look like this evening. It'll include participation from myself and members across the way from the senior leadership team. I'll begin with a brief overview of the capital program and our proposed funding strategy, touching briefly on the infrastructure funding gap and a summary of deferred projects. Following the high-level overview, each department will provide highlights of their program and an overview of some of their key strategic initiatives for 2024. Tonight's presentation will conclude with a review of the forecasted status of debt and reserve funds across the town based on the proposed infrastructure spending. Finally, we'll have our recommendation to be considered by council and welcome any questions from members of council on our proposed program. So the consolidated capital budget for 2024 totals just under $80 million in total spending. As indicated on this slide, it's a combination of roughly $60 million in carry forward projects and just under $20 million in new capital requests. For those referencing the 2024 budget report that was tabled at our last meeting on November 27th, you'll note a number of the projects have the prefix CF. This refers to carry forward initiatives, as well as those with the prefix RP, which refers to projects that were reprioritized throughout the 2023 year. Overall, 3/4 of the entire program is represented by carry forward initiatives, while the remaining 25% is new initiatives or additional funding towards those carry forward projects. From this, approximately 85% of all new funding within the 2024 program is focused on critical infrastructure services initiatives. This slide might be small to see, but you can see the colors. The slide gives an outline of net capital investments that's carry forward and the new spend. So you can see the vast majority within all divisions are carry forward projects, the orange section indicating the new capital requests. As has been noted in previous budget years, it's staff's goal to tackle that blue backlog of projects prior to seeking additional funding towards new initiatives. As such, the current year ask has excluded a number of projects that were deferred, and we'll summarize those on a later slide. The significant capital spending for critical underground, water, and sanitary infrastructure assets will heavily impact their dedicated reserve funds. The forthcoming water and sanitary rate study to occur in 2024 will help us to mitigate the impact on reserves and debt financing requirements by updating rates within this user pay service area. Looking at the consolidated capital program, this graph shows distribution of funding by source. So the majority of expenditures are funded from the town's reserve and reserve funds, which underscores the criticality of reserve fund transfers that we've included within the town's consolidated budget. Nearly 1/4 of all funding is sourced via debt financing, with the majority coming in from water and wastewater service areas. The capital levy that's proposed at $3.5 million covers 4%, that's a typo, of the overall program. And that's in alignment with the town's asset management program and the need for more own source revenues over the long term. So CAO Smith did speak to the infrastructure funding gap. I'll note these are annual figures. This data is derived from the council-approved asset management plan. So in 2022, staff with the support of external consultants completed the first phase of our asset management program, focusing on core infrastructure assets. As you'll see on this graph, that funding gap for each service area is significant on an annual basis still. The annual funding gap is nearly $5 million combined, and that necessitated the need to begin building internal resources to close this gap over the long term. The 2024 update to the asset management plan will incorporate non-core assets and without a doubt will expand this funding gap. The updated plan will also look to include a funding strategy to make capital spending sustainable over the long term. It was noted in the tabling of the budget last week the significant savings generated from the transition to the OPP recovery billing model. And these savings did generate the opportunity to begin the process of building a sustainable capital program, which we've included an increase of $700,000 towards current year capital expenditures, and increase the amount that's transferred to critical general capital reserves, that increase of $1.5 million. So the combination of these two, again, consistent with our asset management practice, has a net impact of $2.2 million. That's a portion of the savings from the OPP transition. The remainder will be outlined further during our meeting tomorrow evening through the operating program. This list, again, might be difficult to read. It's on page 33 of the budget report, but it does list, we felt it was appropriate, to not exclude this information from council and from the public. These are the projects that were brought forward by staff, by the leaders within each department as critical capital initiatives, but we needed, based on the current resources in place, to defer those projects until such time as the town has sufficient funding to move forward. So you'll see from that list a number of projects that, to David's point, would assist the town in moving forward and having the infrastructure in a state that we'd like it to be at. But the funding right now isn't there to move forward with these projects, and it would be a considerable amount of debt to take on to move forward with those at this time. So with that high-level context of where things are at, the 10-year capital forecast and notably the 2024 program is listed on page 32 of the full budget report. And rather than speak to the items themselves, it's appropriate for the members of senior leadership team to outline programs within their area. So with that, I'll hand it over to Acting GM Chris Moore to go over the corporate services initiatives for this year.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. Mayor and Council, thank you for the opportunity. The corporate services capital budget is really focused on technology for the most part. So the 5 initiatives that I'm going to cover are really focused on that. And we've heard recently, even as recent as last Monday from Blackline, some of the priority projects that need to go forward. So excited to present those to you. We're looking at, just in order, we have them: enterprise application modernization, enterprise asset management, which ties nicely to our asset management plan, records and information management program, computer hardware, security, and data integrity. And part of the challenge with technology, as you know, is once you put it in, you have to maintain it. And I've told people in the past and other places I've been, it's no different than a fire station or a road. It's just one of those investments you make. The interesting thing about technology is it's supposed to get faster and cheaper, as we go. And I think really what it provides is more enhanced solutions for us. So it's just one of those things that once you start, you have to continue to support it. Under enterprise application modernization. So as an organization, we've got some key things that we run. Our tax system is very key to collecting taxes, managing that information, providing that information to the public. The current system we have is at a point, like we'd like to say in the technology world, it's kind of past its end of life, both from a functionality perspective and an integration perspective. A lot of our systems and a lot of the ones that we plan on replacing are really standalone systems, and they don't work in a way that would easily allow us to take that information and put it places where the public would find it useful, like the website. And I think too, when you look at our systems, the way they currently run, it's extra work for the staff to use those systems and to run reports. So we're looking at enterprise application modernization, a real focus on our taxation system, our customer relationship system, and parking management system. I probably don't have to explain to you how we manage parking right now, but from my perspective, it needs to move to the 21st century. And with Mr. Witkowski on board, we're quite excited to have some automation for staff, but also just as important, automation for Mr. Kelly's staff when it comes to processing bills and sending that information on. We've identified for each of our initiatives the strategic alignment, so that you see it. A lot of the strategic alignment for corporate services initiatives are really around innovation and corporate capacity and future readiness, so that we are prepared not just for the future, but for today. One of the things that I always focus on when I talk about capital in a municipal setting is what are the operating impacts from capital? And these projects that we're looking at in terms of technology, the way I like to approach systems projects is you include the first year of the operating in the capital project, and then that gives you time to know what the cost and the expenses are, so you can bring it back to council for the next budget. And so we'll know some of that as we get into it, but giving you some idea of what those will be: software licensing, hosting, maintenance, and support. I've talked a little bit about kind of the lack of the systems, and kind of the risk of not doing this is that we continue to have the technology that doesn't work for the staff. You've heard me say this before. I mean, the technology needs to work for the staff so the staff can work for the public. That's kind of, we're here to serve the public, and the systems need to be here to serve us. And that's why we're bringing this one forward. The next one is focused on asset management. Mr. Kelly or Mr. Koselleck would be able to tell you how much money we have invested in assets, but I know it's probably in the billions of dollars. We need systems to help us manage those assets. And the systems that we're looking at that are integrated with that too are the need for our GIS strategy. I've spoken to you about that before, and how integral GIS is to running the operation. We currently don't have an IT master plan. We need that in place. It doesn't, not having it doesn't stop me from coming forward and saying these are the priorities. It's about bringing those things all together in dealing with the systems, upgrading the current systems that we have, and making sure that that ties together in the future. Having a system for asset management to allow us to be able to manage the assets, to forecast replacement. And the other really important thing is that the asset management systems needs to integrate with our financial systems to build the financial models. And I've committed to Mr. Kelly that at next year's budget, when we come back to present the budget, we will have a visualization model where we can bring the GIS system and show you, on the map of Orangeville what things will look like if we do X or Y. So that's just, to me, something that should happen in the 23rd year of the 21st century. The other really important thing that we're working on in this project is having current and up-to-date systems for building, permitting, and licensing. That there's a lot of work that happens there on an ongoing basis for our staff, and we just need to have the tools for staff, but also really important for members of the public or builders, developers, when they submit things, to be able to go onto our website and say, hey, where is that project? Because if they could do that, and I know they do that in other municipalities, it would save phone calls and ongoing phone calls, and it's just one of those efficiencies. The risk of not doing these things will make it more difficult, time consuming for us when it comes to legislative reporting. And we just need to be more efficient when it comes to having the tools for staff. I call me old fashioned, but I need paper. I don't know if I'm apologizing or not, but so speaking of paper, records and information management. So what I would say is records is more than just paper. We do have a lot of paper records and archive in that, but there's a whole world of electronic information that you all interact with on a daily basis. And working very closely with the clerks, this is really one of those shared initiatives between IT and clerks. But we need to have in place, we need the systems and the technology to be able to automate. There are a lot of things that our existing platforms will do in an automated fashion that we need to turn those things on so it will work for us. But also we need some tools to be able to better manage even our paper records, and we don't have those tools. And I think having the tools will make it easier for the staff to want to classify and record information. And I've been in other municipalities. It's not that people don't want to file things. It's just if it's hard to file things, it just, it's extra work. So we need to make it easy for people to file things. And the approach we're taking with this project is to first identify the work, the business requirements. We'll develop the strategy, and then with the strategy, we'll look to implement the systems. So we follow in that order. And having this will, mitigate the risk of managing some of the challenges when it comes to reporting and non-compliance and some of those things. So it's just something that we need to have, especially from a legislative perspective. The next project is computer hardware. So this kind of goes back to my point. Once we have it, we need to maintain it and build it and grow it as the organization grows. The picture there is actually from our data center. It's in a top secret location, so you all know where it is. And one of the first things that I saw when I got here was the data center. I was quite impressed with how it was designed and laid out and managed. It's just one of those things that people look for to make sure that it's functioning properly. But with the technology that we have there and in all of our facilities runs our operation, and it allows everybody to do what they need to do on a daily basis. It's not just email and calendar, but it's all of our systems. And as well, we do provide network and infrastructure for SCADA and some other control systems that we have in the organization. We have a fiber optic network that connects all of our facilities, and that it's also used by the school board and others. And it's really important to maintain that infrastructure, and that's what these funds are for. The other thing that we're introducing through this process is a refresh of our technology. In the past, we've not always stayed current with the technology that staff use. I'm sure we stay current with the technology you use from a council term perspective, but we want to make sure that we're not holding on to any old technology. When the technology gets past warranty, it becomes expensive to maintain, and we need it to be current and operational. And the same is true for the equipment we have in the data center. It's on a little longer life cycle, but it still needs to be replaced and maintained. And then the last and probably the most important these days is security and data integrity. If you were to ask me how secure are we, I would tell you we are very secure because we've done the appropriate work recently around penetration tests and vulnerability assessments. We've identified some risks, we've addressed those, but that's really an ongoing battle, if you will, because the world is a dangerous place, especially on the internet. So we do have systems that we have in place and that we need to maintain. And then as some of the cyber risks change, we need to be addressing that as well. So it's extremely important. A lot of people they wonder, why would a municipality be attacked? But, I will tell you, we run critical infrastructure here. And one of the things that the federal government has been working on for some time is changes to cyber laws related to critical infrastructure, which we're monitoring closely. So it's important from that perspective, just to make sure that our systems are current, accurate, and safe so that we can maintain our critical infrastructure, water and wastewater systems. And then that we have the tools for staff to use to keep them safe in their work. And I always talk about this, and I'll end on this note from a security perspective. It's relatively easy to harden the technology. The hardest thing to harden is the people. And so we are very focused too, and we've got the tools around training. Part of the vulnerability assessment and penetration test we did recently, we had the consultants do some social engineering, and just to see if people called our people or if they dropped off USB or any of those things. And all I would say is all the training we've done in the past has helped people realize that they need to be aware. So really pleased with that. And so those are our top 5 initiatives, and I'll hand the floor over to Mr. Koslik.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. After that, Mayor, members of council, hello, good evening. I wanted to focus on a few of the community services projects. So this represents, we have 5 different types of divisions within our department. But at the end of the day, we're all offering frontline services, and our infrastructure is really important to maintaining those types of services. We're seeking a Parks flat deck roll-off equipment. It's an attachment, library security inventory system, economic development strategy that will take us into 2029, a fire utility task vehicle and trailer, and water pollution control plant renovations. And I'll go into detail about each of those projects. So the flat deck roll-off equipment, this is a temporary attachment that would attach to one of the public work trucks. But right now, staff, when they have to move around equipment, we have to call public work staff, wait for them to become available, and then they bring over this roll-off piece of equipment or the truck to use it. which helps us move around large equipment. So recently we redid the HVAC system here at Town Hall, or an air conditioning unit at the top. There's a shed that's outside the staff section. We had to wait for Parks to come and move that shed while we had contractors on site ready to install that air conditioning unit. If you recall, it was pretty hot at that point and time was of the essence. In this case, in Parks Department, we have one AZ driver's license. If that staff member is not available, again, we have to rely on Public Works, which is always very collaborative, but them having to stop their work to come and help us to maintain our work is becoming challenging. So this flat deck roll-off equipment would attach to one of the Public Works trucks, as I mentioned, and it would allow park staff to freely move among their projects and move that equipment around accordingly. It aligns with corporate capacity, increases staff capacity and productivity. It's less waiting time for certified drivers to transport necessary equipment. And again, as I mentioned, it increases staff productivity, specifically in the Parks division. If we are not able to secure the funding for this type of equipment, we will continue to organize our work and our projects around Public Works schedule, but again, it will slow down staff productivity. The next project I wanted to highlight was Orangeville Public Library's Security Inventory System, or otherwise known as RFID. It's a pretty cool project, as you can see, but I think beyond its cool factor, it's necessary. It is a radio frequency identification technology, which is currently being used in hospitals, in retailers, and in other libraries around the province. It is a wireless radio system that transfers data from a tag that usually is attached to a book or something, a tangible item, so you can identify and track its use. So it requires no physical contact to follow that information. So if somebody checks out a book, you'll be able to identify who was the borrower, who checked it out, where is it currently located within the library system. Is it in the Dropbox? If it is on hold, then we'll be able to quickly retrieve it and pass it on to the next person if it's a popular item. As you can imagine, an RFID system would save time, and that is the biggest opportunity with this type of system. It increases customer satisfaction, staff productivity. We also have reoccurring repetitive injuries. So you can imagine how much, maybe not a lot of muscle power to stock the shelves and return the books, but over and over again, it does create repetitive injuries. And the RFID system usually pays for themselves in 2 to 3 years. So there'll be a return on our investment. The risk is just the time-consuming act of following a book around, receiving it at the front desk, checking it out, or checking it in, putting it back on the shelf, logging it, monitoring it. With the self-checkout, of course, that would increase efficiencies, even with the users. I think they would recognize the library services as closer to a retail service, so the same level of service you would get at maybe a store that you were shopping at. That is customer-focused. Slide, please. Thank you. I wanted to highlight economic development strategy. So the last strategy was completed in 2018. It's considered a 5-year plan, and the majority of those key action items are already complete or obsolete. We're not going to tackle them at this point. The new strategy, like other strategies, will identify objectives and actions that will guide the economic development to 2028. It will support the staff team to develop a comprehensive plan, complete with stakeholder engagement. We are aware that the County of Dufferin is also going to tackle an economic development strategy. Staff have met with members of the county to talk about what their strategy is trying to achieve and compared it, relate it back to what we are trying to achieve. The county's economic development strategy at this point is looking at the county as a whole. So there will be no customized opportunities for Orangeville to really define what are we going to do with our business community. And as you can see in the risks area, without our own economic development strategy, we will not be able to properly address current challenges related to industrial commercial land availability, workforce development, and business retention and attraction. There will be opportunities to streamline. We will continue to work with the County of Dufferin, but I think it's imperative that in Orangeville, knowing we have, as I say often, our thriving downtown core, how to support them, how to support our industries, our employment lands or increasing employment lands. The replacement of Fire's UTV trailer, so a utility task vehicle. It was damaged and it's no longer operable. A replacement is needed for remote land firefighting and rough terrain rescue. So we have the Bruce Trail here, we have Island Lake. Recently there's been some emergency situations in some of those areas, and emergency fire services was unable to get there as soon as they possibly could because they did not have this type of vehicle. The operating impact, it would increase access to the remote areas, as I mentioned, and of course the rail lands. So right now, only a small portion of our rail lands is converted to a trail, but once we have the entire rail lands converted to a trail, some of it is in residential areas. It would be a lot easier if we could drive down the path in this UTV. It is the trailer and track, there's a track on it. The track accessory will allow use all year round. It will go on snow, make traveling through snow a lot easier. It is equipped with firefighting skid to remote for the remote interface fires, and it can be used as a shuttle for personnel or equipment if a truck can't get in there or an SUV can't get in there. Without the UTV, the response times will increase or remain increased, and access to the scene becomes more difficult. The trailer I want to mention was it was 16 to 18 foot enclosed trailer with a ramp. So there's a whole bunch of other possibilities with transporting items at that point. And the last project in community services I wanted to highlight was the water pollution control plant roof replacement. This is an ongoing capital project. We have replaced 2 roofs in the past, but there are more roofs to be fixed. 4 roofs require repair in 2024, along with associated brickwork. As you know, with any renovation, if the building envelope is not in sound condition, it could impact what's inside, and what's inside these buildings we definitely would like to protect. So it prolongs the life of the building envelope. It protects the components inside the building. If the roofs are not addressed, our 10-year capital plan for this project is delayed. Construction costs will go up. There will never be a better time than now, and the entire structure will continue to be compromised. And with that, I will pass it over to Mr. Koselleck, Infrastructure Services.
Thank you, Heather. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I want to present a little bit of the Infrastructure Services capital budget highlights. So we have 5 projects listed on the page. The first is the new water pumping station and storage facility at Well 5. The next is our road resurfacing program. The third is the Mill Creek Channel improvements. Fourth is the road reconstruction of Victoria, Ontario, and Cardwell streets. And the last is our water meter replacement program. I'll go into a little bit more detail on each of the items. The first one is the new water pumping station storage facility at Well 5. For those who don't know, Well 5 is located near the Greenwood Cemetery on Veterans Way. One of the things we're looking at doing is starting construction in the spring of a new water storage facility. It would be similar to the one pictured here. One of the advantages in that area, we have a higher area beside the well, so we don't have to have your typical tall tower. We were able to get by with a lower one and use the land as our elevation, so it reduces the cost that way. It's expected to take a little over a year for the construction, so it's anticipated to start in the spring and be completed in fall 2025. As CAO Smith mentioned, one of the items we want to try and work on once this is completed is the rehabilitation of the water storage facility over on, I guess it's Sea Line, the West Sector Reservoir. It was built in 1989 for the development of that area. And one of the issues is we don't have enough capacity at this time to take it out of service. So by building this new facility, we'll have enough capacity that we can take out the other one and do maintenance on it, which will probably take about a year to complete, but it allows us to update our infrastructure. So with this, it has a strategic alignment of future readiness. So this will allow us to do maintenance on our facilities, but also accommodate future demand and future growth. It'll also provide the town additional storage. And one of the big things is just even from fire flow protection, the additional storage. If we do have a big fire, we had the one on Mill Street. It's when we have a fire, it does take a lot of water, and having the additional capacity as the town grows will be very valuable. It's one of the risks if we don't construct the new storage facility. We can't take the West Sector Reservoir out of service for doing the maintenance. And when we had the inspection done, they recommended having it done as soon as possible. So I want to proceed with this in a timely manner. The second item is our road resurfacing program. One of the things we also talked about is trying to extend the lifespan of our roads at an economical process. And the road resurfacing really works out well. I think a great example, we did the section in Broadway right in front of the town hall. You usually grind off, I guess I'm old, so I say 2 inches or 4 inches depending on the road, but 59 to 90 millimeters of asphalt and be able to repave the road. So as you noticed in front of the town hall, we were in and out in about a week. They came in one day, ground it, we fixed the manholes, any curb, and then come back in and pave it, put the line striping on. So when you do the resurfacing, that road will probably be good for another 15, maybe 20 years. And very, very little disturbance to residents. If we did a reconstruction, you might have a road that'll last 25 years, but it would probably take a month of disruption. You have to take out all the asphalt, you have to put gravel in, you have to have good weather. So the road resurfacing, really, we get great bang for our buck preserving the roads. So we're going to look at having a program in 2024 to extend the lifespan of the roads. So it'll extend the life at a lower cost, and it also reduces potholes and cracks. So it reduces liability that way. Much of our roads, you get potholes and cracks, and it is a trip hazard on some of them. So with the resurfacing, it gets it fixed. I guess the risks, if it's not completed, the roads will continue to deteriorate. It'll cost more in the future, have more disruption, and more risk for trip hazards or other liabilities. The third item we have listed is the Mill Creek improvements. For those who aren't familiar with the area, Mill Creek is behind Freshco and the beer store, the creek in that area, where our new transit hub is. With that area, there's quite often floods every year that affect the business along that area and also where the old fire hall is. We've worked with the Credit Valley Conservation Authority to come up with a plan that will address that. So we'll have improvements. It'll get rid of the flooding issues permanently, and also with the trail in there, it'll reduce the liability. And I guess the risk, if we don't go ahead with it, there's flooding every year and it'll only can get worse. So by doing this, we'll prevent the flooding and also make it safer for people on the recreational trail. The fourth item we have is the reconstruction of Victoria, Ontario, and Cardwell. So once a road gets too far along in its deterioration, it comes to the point where you really can't resurface it. There's not enough stability in the asphalt to resurface it, and you have to reconstruct it. With these, the road is in poor condition, but they've also had a bit of a history with water breaks in the area. And we've also looked at the sewers, and the sewers could use replacement. So it's a great candidate to do the reconstruction because the water should be replaced, the sewers should be replaced, and the road replaced. So with those, we're looking at getting it out early for a tender in the new year so we can get the construction completed. And I guess the risk is if we don't do it, we'll continue to have water breaks, poor condition of the roads, and it'll only be moving the problem downstream a little bit. And the last one we want to talk about was our water meter replacement program. So this is a big program that'll be starting in 2024. We're looking at replacing all water meters in town. It'll take about 1.5 to 2 years to have it work completed. But a lot of it, I guess the strategic alignment we have down future readiness. But one of the big things, the water meters to be more accurate. Right now we have a majority of our water meters are over 20 years old. And they're not as accurate. The water flows through them. They don't get registered the same way. With this too, we'll be able to have residents monitor their water. People can connect through the app to have them get alerts or get warnings if they do a lot of usage. We've had problems where people go away, or even when they're at home, they don't notice a toilet or water softener working correctly, and they come back and they get a big bill from Hydro when they get their invoice, and then try and figure it out. Whereas this way, you can be alerted that you've had flow for 24 hours straight. You might want to look at your plumbing. So we can flag people early on. So it leads to conservation. It leads to happier residents because they don't get a big bill at the end of the day. And one of the big things too, with being able to accurately measure our water usage, we can look at it and say, we produced X number of gallons of water in a 1 week period. And then we can check the meters to see how much has been used. And we can see, 80% of the water has been used or 90%, and we can track how much water we're losing in the system, which I think in the long run will be great. One of the things we want to do in a future year is put some meters in the distribution system. So then we can help break down which areas potentially have more usage. So we can say area 1 has this much usage and see where the discrepancies are. So it'll help us detect water losses. I don't think we have it in here, but our water losses are in the order of $1 million a year when you figure out the unaccounted for water. So that's a huge way if we can get tighter on it. We'll use less water. We'll have more capacity in our system. All around, it'll be a great thing. There'll be some disturbance when people get their meter replaced, but the nice thing with these, they're all remote controlled and we won't have to go in people's houses to read them. So those are our top 5 projects for infrastructure services, and I'll pass it down to the treasurer, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Koselleck, and thank you to each of the peers across the way for giving us a glimpse into the capital program for this year. Again, there's several more projects listed within the full budget report, but I appreciate the opportunity to highlight as some of the key ones within each of the areas. So you would have noticed on each of those, they were formatted in the same manner, but the bottom piece was the fiscal impact, which you would have noticed a number of them did require external financing. This graphic kind of shows that we're obviously not at the best time in the history of the economy to take on debt. So we are being strategic about that, looking at critical projects only, moving forward with debt financing. So the target overnight lending rate since 2018 highlights that we're not at the best point within the economic cycle. Having said that, we're working, as I've mentioned in previous presentations, to develop a comprehensive debt management strategy. Really, that'll help this council guide your decision making more on when and where to issue debt for the most strategic ones. At this point in time, we are expecting that you trust staff that we're bringing forward the projects that need to move ahead right now and use debt financing. But in the long term, a clearer strategy will be in place going forward. So projected debt issuances for the upcoming year will result in the new debt servicing requirements indicated on this slide. Debt is specifically being planned to be issued for the Rotary Park redevelopment project, the fire station replacement, aerial fire truck replacement, the road reconstruction works that were spoken of by Mr. Koselleck on Church Street, Victoria Street, Ontario Street, and Cardwell, and then investments in water treatment facilities and the water pollution control plant. So I will note that a large portion of the debt servicing costs pertain to user fee funded in the water and wastewater area, so those won't impact the tax levy. This summary slide over the 10-year horizon was shared at the tabling of the budget, but I felt it was important to bring it forward again to note that the town's debt servicing costs are still well below that orange line, which is the annual repayment limit that's put forward by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Having said that, that comprehensive debt management strategy will help gauge where we want to be in relation to that line going forward. With regard to reserve funds, the capital forecast does draw significant amounts from our reserve funds, which does show the criticality of them. They're predicted to drop over the next 3 years before slowly building up towards sustainable levels over the long term. That projection is based on the expectation that council will continue to approve transfers into reserve funds to make that program sustainable. This slide was shared at the last one, and I wanted to provide a little more additional context this time. So overall, the debt to reserve ratio is moving in the wrong direction the next 3 years before rebounding back down to more manageable levels. But we did do a bit more analysis into it and split it out to take out user pay, to take out water and sanitary services. So the tax funded debt is at much more manageable levels. They still can be better if we're building up reserves to where they are, but it does underline the criticality within water and sanitary rates, and that user fee supported area. That's the one where the challenge is from a debt to reserve ratio. So with that said, there's a myriad of capital planning improvements that we're planning to bring forward as a finance team with support from the senior leadership team. I did reference that water and sanitary rate study that's set to go out to the market in an RFP, I believe by the end of this week. That should help to get a basis for understanding where those rates should be at to sustain operating and capital. Coupled with that is a development charges study and a stormwater rate study. Stormwater rate study was indicated and recommended through the asset management program. Then I've spoken enough about a debt management strategy, but with that debt management strategy would come a investment strategy for funds that are sitting in reserves, and then a reserve fund framework, so we have a better understanding of target reserve levels, how much we ought to be putting aside for future needs. All of those together are going to build what I feel will be a strong long-term financial strategy for the town of Orangeville, so that we have a plan going forward. So with that, I just want to, before that is the recommendation, and we're going to get into questions, I would say first that, again, a lot of work by staff, a lot of work by my team in finance, but a lot of participation and effort from all the departments. This isn't put together overnight, and I appreciate the level of detail that each of the departments went into with specific projects. So with that, I would hand it back to you, Mayor Post. I might just ask for efficiency or the best process, probably if we focused on one department at a time and kind of and you can pick which department first. If you want to put acting GM Chris Moore on the hot seat first, that's fine, but I'll leave that up to you as chair. But one department at a time might be the most efficient way of running through the questions. So thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. And thank you to all the GMs, to the CAO, and to the finance team for all the work that's gone into the budget. And that extends to all of the management team and staff who've also contributed. I know that this is a labor of love, and I know that this year was exceptionally challenging. So on behalf of council, I want to thank you all for your hard work. Let's start with Acting Manager Moore. So was there any questions from council regarding the corporate services section of the budget? Councillor Sherwood? Maybe? Okay. Okay, Deputy Mayor?
Not necessarily a question. Well, maybe it is. I first of all, I really appreciate the presentation. The areas for IT resonates with me. I think all of the areas that you're focusing on and you're talking to me about, I'm certainly not up to snuff in the way that you and your team are. But from my experiences, those seem to be the appropriate areas to focus on. Now, my question is maybe I don't understand the, we've got a bunch of different records right now that are sitting in our building, paper, and we need to get them electronic. And it's been an ongoing thing for quite some time. I think you're referencing that this work is going to get done. But I also thought I heard that we weren't going to do the work done, and now I'm a bit confused. So can you just elaborate? And if I could, just as a statement, I just think it's something that we need to get done. Like it's wasting space. There's risk to damage of the material through mold or what have you, and we should just accomplish this. And if it's not going to be done, then we should band together and like enough's enough. Would be my thoughts. But thank you very much for your presentation.
Mr. Moore, go ahead.
Absolutely. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Taylor. We had started last year to scan a lot of our plans and drawings, and a lot of them are stored in a place where they shouldn't be. And staff and administration have been working on getting them out of there because they are records from that perspective. Our plan was to scan them all into a digital format and then decide what to keep or what not to keep. And our concern about that was that wasn't the best use of funds. So the program that we're on right now, working with the acting deputy clerk and the records team, is to, and the facilities team, is to find a place where we can move those drawings out of the operations center to a place where we can process them, clean them up, and then determine, as you probably know, what we need to keep are the as-builts for the, as completed drawings. We need to figure out which ones are the records and which ones are the working documents, and go through that. So we're working on that initiative, still planning on doing it, but we've stopped the plan of scanning them all, and because of it wasn't the best use of funds. So what we've actually done to fund the strategy and the record system is we're proposing that we reuse those funds. So instead of digitizing, we actually put together a strategy and do the work to get the documents out of that place where they shouldn't be, cleaned up and put in a place where they should be, the paper documents. And when it comes to the digital information, we don't need to scan all of those drawings. What we need to ensure is that all of our assets and the as-built drawings are properly in our GIS system. One of the reasons why we want to proceed with the GIS strategy, and working with Mr. Koslek and his team to provide on our website data submission standards for builders, developers, and contractors, so that when they do create drawings for work that come to us for approval, they can submit them digitally. They don't have to print them and deal with the paper. So we're also working on that initiative.
Do you have a follow-up, Deputy Mayor?
Candidly, if I could be so blunt, I just don't understand what you're telling me. And I know that sounds dense, but what I want to do is ensure that, so we've already seen sitting here in these seats that, 30 years ago, things were done and we can't find the stuff. Are we going to be in a position, and do you have the resources that you need to make it so that someone who's sitting here 30 years from now is not going to be upset as we are today? And I'm sorry, I'm just not grasping, but if you're telling me that we're going to be good and that you have the resources, great. If not, do we need to circle back and talk about that in this, and to get you the resources that you need so that we're not there? And again, I apologize, I'm not understanding your answer.
Mr. Moore, go ahead.
Don't apologize. I'm sorry. With the records management strategy that we want to take on, proposing, and with the record system, we will have, if we get those things in place, then we take all of the paper drawings that we have and electronic information and then manage it. So to answer your question, if you approve that, we will have what we need to do the work to secure and protect our records and put them in a place that isn't the place where they are right now, which is where they shouldn't be. Does that answer your question?
Deputy Mayor?
Maybe it's an offline discussion, but it doesn't make me feel great. Like, it feels like we probably should do more in terms of those records. And again, you have expertise that I don't have, so I certainly wouldn't step on your toes, but it doesn't feel like we're all the way to bright. I'd even lean to you, Councillor Andrews, like, you've been through this too. Like, wouldn't you understand? Yeah. Okay. Like, if everybody feels good about this, great, but it feels like we're not all the way to bright.
Sounds to me right now, if I can summarize, that we're on step one of the process, and that what's included in the budget right now will get us to a point where they can better understand what additional resources might be needed in the future. Is that a fair wrap up?
Absolutely. And we just want to be able to do that to a plan. That's why we want to have the plan.
Thank you. Do you have additional questions? Are you good for now? Councillor Sherwood, are you ready?
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you to Mr. Moore. I'm looking on page 78 under the IT capital budget. You did touch lightly on this during your presentation about the IT master plan. Now, within that document on page 78, there's recommendations about, the parking software that you've mentioned, the CRM system upgrade, the GIS strategy, and EAM software applications. But I'm going to focus back to the IT master plan, because in my opinion, if we approve to do all of those other things before doing the IT master plan, are we not putting the cart before the horse? Should we not wait to see what that master plan recommends before going forward with these other plans?
Mr. Moore?
Great question. And through you, Madam Mayor, what I would say is that if we did the plan, it would tell us we need to replace these systems because we know they're past end of life. So we don't need to wait for the plan to tell us that. The GIS strategy, some organizations would put the GIS strategy and the IT master plan together. But when you do that, you limit which firms can help you because some specialize in each area. So the IT master plan is important to have because it's going to take us beyond what these systems are. We know they need to be replaced. The tax system, the finance system, the enterprise asset management system. So it's not putting the cart before the horse. I would say it's putting two carts beside each other and putting them in the same direction.
Does that help to answer? Any additional? Oh, Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Post, just thank you for that. Mr. Moore, I think it's also important to underline that those projects you're referring to all have that RP prefix in front of them. So those are funds that have already been in the capital budget. They're just being reprioritized, spreading the funds over multiple projects. They're the same funds. It's not new dollars being asked for.
Councillor Sherwood, that's good. Okay. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and more of a comment through you to Mr. Moore. Truly appreciative of the comment you made about cybersecurity, and I've spoken about this on council before. I think it's absolutely imperative as we take a look at the critical applications that are needed to ensure the protection of our municipality. And as we move forward, regardless of how much we feel that we have a brick wall that's going to be in front of us, we take a look at some of those examples. Most recently, Southwestern Hospital network that was attacked when they thought everything was in place, and they still ended up having some issues. So it's really only a comment, Your Worship, to Mr. Moore, but I'm glad to see that it's embedded in your presentation and as part of the budget ask.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Moore at this time? Seeing none. Okay, I will turn it over to Ms. Savage's department next. So community services. Can I turn it over to council for any questions you may have? Go ahead, Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Ms. Savage, relating to fire department, just wondering, you want to replace car 102. Right now, it's not being used. I'm just wondering if it could be pushed down the road into 25 budget. That's question number one.
Ms. Savage, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Post. Councillor Stevens. That currently is the fire chief and deputy fire chief vehicle. It's in the rotation to be replaced right now. If we delay it, then as you know, prices will increase. And there's also a lead build time. So if we delay it, there will be a risk that when we need it, it won't be available.
Did you have another question?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
In the utility vehicle, how many times have we used it past few years? I understand it's not in service right now, but
this is in the absence of the deputy fire chief, the acting fire chief, I do know that it is used heavily for training. So when it's not being used in emergency services, then it is used for training. And I think that it's good to have on standby. As I mentioned, we've had some issues, especially in the fall, as we have hikers at Island Lake. We weren't able to use it, and it resulted in not so good consequences. So I can find out exactly how often, what's the frequency, but I do know when it is not being used in an emergency situation, it is being used for training.
Thank you.
Did you have any additional questions? Well, we're on fire. Was there anybody else who'd like to ask questions about fire, Deputy Mayor?
So I would. I don't know, like, should we wait till the deputy chief is here? Like, candidly, maybe I'll just start with an overarch and maybe we go from there. But $16 million in this department this year. I did talk to the deputy chief about this before we came here. There's a lot of asks in here. Next year's slightly better, but it's still super high. I don't think that this council has ever gone against the fire department. I don't think the councils that I wasn't involved with previously weren't always supportive of the fire department. And I don't want the fire department to think that this council is not supportive of them, but I worry about all of the different things that are on here. And if you're truly being a team player, which I think they would want to be, they would look and see what we're up against. And I just look at these things and think, boy, maybe I don't need to deny them, but can we move them? So when we look at 2026, we come to a significant issue, and the issue is the debt, you know, and the reserves and the funding and whatnot. It's not at a great place. Like we're going to be vulnerable at that time. I'd like to talk about a plan that 2024 moves some of these things. And the 16 million and the 10 million in 2024 and 2025 should be recognized. And I think the fire department would say that's fair. And I'm kind of with you, Councillor Stevens. Like I look at it and I'm sure that the deputy chief would have a great rationale for these things, but we should probably hear from him and understand what these initiatives are. And there's quite a few of them. And so my ask would be is that they think about moving these things and we really talk about what we need. And by the way, the last statement I would say is these individuals are risking their lives. They're going into areas that are dangerous and they need to have absolutely what they require to do their jobs. But my job is to balance that. And they need to come back to us and talk to us in a way that we can understand about why they need all these things and why they need them now. Like in all honesty, 2026, 2027 would be so much better for us versus 2024, 2025. So that's the conversation I'd like to have. And I'd love it if we could have the here at some point.
Ms. Savage?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Post. Yes, Deputy Mayor Taylor. So the fire chief will be joining us. He's just at training this evening, addressing the volunteer firefighters. What I could do high level, if we look at this capital plan for fire for 2024, similar to the answer I gave Councillor Stevens, you push anything, it's going to cost more. So some of these things are end of life, some of the things are priority. So we know that we have a community risk assessment that's already been procured. We're working on something like that. I do believe that that is legislated to be completed by Q2 of 2024. The LMR, the land mobile radio, and the PSBN, that's a carry forward project. It's been already delayed a couple of years and we've seen an increase. This is imperative because right now we're unable to communicate with other members of the fire service and with other surrounding areas. You'll see increased need because I think we're playing catch up. We also are offering fire services to 3 other municipalities. So they have an expected level of service that they require too. The bunker gear, we did do a replacement last year of some of them. And now because there's only a 10-year lifespan, there's another set. So if we delay it, it means 2 sets in the future or 3 sets in the future. The vehicles we could look at, the replacement, the ladder truck, it's on order. This is just, again, we're spreading the costs out over years, which you're suggesting as well. The mini pumper, we could look at that. Fire station, we've had many conversations about that. That's already being spread out over 2 years. And then the master plan, we're already at 10 years, similar to the economic development strategy. We've completed a lot of the action items, or some of them have been obsolete. And
Great.
Yep.
Mayor Post. I'll just note that of that 16 million you're talking about, only 384,000 is new money. The rest of it has already been approved in previous budgets. So what you would need to do if you're looking to get some of that money moved out is cancel projects that have already been approved. I just wanted to be clear about that.
Go ahead.
So to be clear, I am with you. When you talk about a ladder truck, I understand that 1210 could be 1510 in a snap of the fingers. So I'm not suggesting those things. There's just things on here that, you know, I think that we should talk about them, and maybe there's some pennies to be found. And in my mind, and Councillor Stevens brought this up first, and he's right. When I look at a UTV replacement, like this is a fairly urban area that we're in. And again, these are comments that the fire department would probably sigh at and say, what a short-sighted individual that is. But I would suggest that Mono should be paying for something like that. Like they're the rural users of tools like this. Why would the town of Orangeville pay for it? And if we were to find out that that was the strategy, then I would suggest that the billing should go there as opposed to us. So we're up against it. I'd just like to have a rationale, and I think having him here and going line by line is probably what we need to do on this budget, this section.
Ms. Savage, do you know what his ETA is in arriving? Because we can push the fire budget for a little bit and talk about other things for now
I
and
think
maybe save some time. Is that good with everybody until acting chief is here?
that's a great idea.
He'll be here soon.
8:30, I would think. he-
Okay, perfect. So let's forget about fire right now. We'll move on to the rest of community services. Was there any other items from community services? Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, so I have a couple of here. 155 on the budget is patio furniture for Alder Street. To me, that's a nice to have. I'm not in support of that. I know the amount is very minuscule, but please explain how this would be considered a need, because I'm really looking for what we really need and not a nice to have. And I have a couple more, but I'll just take one at a time.
Ms. Savage.
Thank you. Councillor Sherwood. So there were extensive water damage to the outside of that portion of Alder Street where you enter into the front doors, and to the right, the outside of the pool. There was, as I mentioned, extensive water damage, leaking coming from the roof. We had to redo the entire foundation. Silver lining of that project is that we were able to create an outdoor patio. So this is a new piece of infrastructure that we will have in our inventory. In order to properly program that space, we would need furniture. So it will now become an extension of the pool. We now can add it into our programming and it will create revenue. It can be deferred, but it also means that there's deferred revenue. So we would use that outdoor patio space for birthday parties, instructional programs, anything to do with the pool. And we would just need to outfit it properly in order to be able to program it. But again, it comes with revenue.
Councillor Sherwood, follow up?
Yes, thank you. And to just go on with it on page 159, it kind of alludes to the same thing with the train station table and chairs. Again, small amount of money, but we don't know what we're doing with the train station yet. And if a large group wants to rent it, and I think they can go to Sherwood McLean and rent tables and chairs. I don't see why we need to do that when we really haven't made a definitive decision on the train station. So again, it's to me a nice to have, not a need.
Ms. Savage?
You're right, Councillor Sherwood. We are doing an expression of interest in the new year to figure out how we're going to repurpose it. In the meantime, we would like to rent the space. Again, it's a rental opportunity. We know this year, the community is eager to use public space. So I've said this before to my colleagues, we're actually starting to rent out the 6 a.m. ICE time slot again, which is unique. We haven't done that in a long time. We are actually renting out all of our meeting rooms and the larger rooms in the banquet hall more frequently than we ever have in the past. We've seen an increase in use of our public space since COVID. The train station will help supplement our rental program. It will now give people another opportunity to go to. And by the time we have, let's say through the expression of interest process, we determine that with council's approval that there is a long-term lease in there. It is a leasehold improvement that we have that equipment for them. In the meantime, we would use it for a rental program.
Thank you, Ms. Savage.
Perfect. And Your Worship, just one more, and then I'll let the floor open to the rest of my
Go ahead,
colleagues.
Councillor Sherwood.
So page 158 is a project manager for facilities. And I see that I'm looking at this as it's not an FTE ask because this is going to be a contract position. And this is a project, it looks to me like many projects that can't be accomplished in 3 years. So I guess is the whole idea to have it tentatively as a contract, probably moving forward to it being a future FTE.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood.
Yeah, Ms. Savage, go ahead.
Thank you. So we debated whether or not this needed to be an additional headcount or on contract. And we felt that it was probably, because there are a number of carry forward projects, there are a number of reprioritized projects, and there are major capital projects within the community service division. Attention to the project management piece outsourced to another company that we would hire and they would go and tackle that, is probably our best opportunity to make sure these capital projects are completed on time and on budget. At this point, there is no intent to convert it into a full-time headcount. We think that the majority of these projects will be caught up. The fire station will be finished by then. Alderpool definitely will be done by then. And so just making sure we have that resource available to us to push these capital projects forward and make sure that they're done properly. We're going to need that outside additional support, but we don't think that it needs to be in-house at this point.
Is there any additional questions? Councillor Andrews, then Deputy Mayor, then Councillor Stevens.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And another comment endorsing one of the points in your presentation, Ms. Savage, regarding the economic development strategy. Having gone through the existing one, as I call it, 2018, no one saw that we were going to have a worldwide pandemic that in fact changed that whole playbook. And despite the fact having gone through the consultant report and the implementation, it didn't include that portion. Post-pandemic, we have some changes that have existed and will continue to exist in our community, and I think it's absolutely imperative for us to endorse this particular request.
So funny, Councillor Andrews, that you would bring that up. So candidly, I love strategy. I think the most important thing to do is sharpen your axe before you go. I'm frustrated with our economic development if I could. And it's not the people. The people do a great job. I don't know that I need another strategy document on economic development for our town. Like, the reality is, we know what the issue is. You called it out in your risks. The risks are we don't have the land, right? We need people. Like, I don't know that I want to spend more money on another study at this time, especially given the fact that we know what we need to do from a resource perspective. Like, we need land, and we need businesses to come and fill that land. And that's really where our focus should be. And to spend the money at this time, like, I don't know, we have small businesses here. That's what we have. And until we get the land, I'm just not sure what we're doing. We haven't progressed the file, right? You'd say we have nickel dime, and that's great. But we don't have a big business here. And in the current situation, we're not going to get one either because we don't have a spot for them to go. So I'm just not sure I see the point. And that's a very negative comment. I apologize to everybody, but I don't want to spend the money on something that I'm not sure we're going to push forward.
Ms. Savage, do you want to make a comment?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Post. Deputy Mayor Taylor. The corporate strategy, one of the pillars is economic resilience. You're right. We know our marching orders. We know what we need to do. We know what our challenges are. I think following through with an economic development strategy, we would need to make sure that the partner we work with is able to find viable options, creative options, out of the box thinking, figure out how are we going to meet these challenges. We do have a great staff team. You're absolutely right. And they are committed to the town and they've done a lot of work. And we want to see that grow. We want to almost move that needle quicker than what we could do in-house. If we could get that outside expertise to help guide us, maybe we can change the scope. Maybe it's not going to be like a traditional strat plan like we've done in the past. Maybe we focus on those specific 3 challenges and figure out who can best deliver on it, knowing the challenges that Orangeville is facing.
Councillor Andrews, like to make comment?
Yes, I do. And thank you, Deputy Mayor Taylor and Ms. Savage, but in particular, Deputy Mayor Taylor and your comment. And I understand exactly where you're coming from, but I also take a look at the page that Ms. Savage has framed here and looking at it differently than we have. I know that, in many people's minds, economic development is in fact leveraged on the land that you have to develop, but looking at it in a different way may be helpful to us moving forward and creating something that exists with existing land, existing partners or new partners in ways that we've never done before. And I think that's the crossroads that we are in right now. It doesn't necessarily have to always be leveraged on the investment in land. From a technological perspective, we can do things in the cloud that didn't exist before that now have. And we know how we even went through this in our previous term of council during a portion of the pandemic. We worked remotely, and so much of this could be done in a different way. And I think that this is the absence of what the existing strategy does not provide, is some of that direction I think we absolutely need to move forward with, to remain progressive.
Well, and the additional comment I would make to that, Councillor Andrews, because I think you covered exactly what my commentary was going to be, is that when it comes to economic development strategies specifically, I think now is the perfect time to do one because we're in a whole new world. We've got an opportunity to leverage trying to develop our economy in a different way and looking at different types of industry that we've never focused on as a town before. Specifically, we do have businesses that aren't using their footprint the way that they used to. The bricks and mortar just isn't what it was pre-COVID. So I think this is probably the best time for us to do one of those strategies, and doing it at the same time as the county is doing theirs will really ensure that we're in lockstep with the county and trying to really push forward some good initiatives. I think it's actually a really good time to do it. And just wanted to also add that the economic development strategy will also look at the tourism aspect of it as well. Although we have a separate strategy for tourism, there's still a component that's going to come into the economic development strategy as well. Yeah, go ahead.
So if I could, I think our tourism strategy is the best thing that I've seen. I've been here since 2002, and we finally nailed who our tourists are, right? If you live in Belgium, you're not coming to Orangeville, right? But if you live in Oakville, you probably are, and you're coming up for the day. It's brilliant. It makes total sense to me. My ask would be, let's not BS each other anymore, and let's talk about what we can truly do to make this community a different place. Like, if we're going to spend money on something, let's make it really practical and rational and reasonable. And if I'm being insulting to staff, I certainly don't mean to. I'm just frustrated because I don't want to spend money on something that's a jerky exercise that is just going through the motions, and it's something that I could have written, in a day. And my other piece is, let's talk to the county and make sure that we're not duplicating efforts and we're tied into them and we're using that expertise and going from there. And if I sound grumpy, I don't want to spend money and see the same result. Let's do something different and unique and get at it. The tourism strategy was different and unique, and it's working. Let's go with something else. And I'm not lecturing. I just don't want to spend the money if it's going to be the same thing. Let's do something different.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Stevens, and then Councillor Prendergast. And then Councillor Sherwood.
Not on that topic. On page 169, and this is for Ms. Savage, BMX park. You would like to, I know it's only $30,000. I just don't understand why we would have to hire a consultant. Can't we just fix whatever the issue is?
Ms. Savage?
Thank you, Mayor Post. Councillor Stevens. Yeah, maybe I could ask Mr. Cosgrove to come to the delegation booth. But in the meantime, what I could say is, we know what we want to do with this. We know that a pump track is multi-use. We know that that's what we want to do. We also want to time this because we have a parking lot strategy. And so when we're doing the parking lot, if we were to invest in doing the parking lot, we want to be able to use the same asphalt pavers to go and do what we need to do. But there's grading, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that Mr. Cosgrove is going to tell you all about.
Mr. Cosgrove, over to you.
Through Mayor Post to Councillor Stevens. Currently, our BMX track was a project that was done through Orangeville Lions Clubs many years ago. It is mainly dirt, gravel, very hard to maintain. Anytime we get rain, we're spending hours and hours to maintain this dirt BMX track we have. What we are looking to do is hire a consultant to try and create a pump track system, very similar to what they might have in the town of Alton, which will be a paved pump track system. The Lions would like to partner with us on that, but we need to have some type of design and get ideas for costing for that. What we were looking at was having the consultant for next year create the design, and then we have the Alder Street parking lot, which is now approaching 21 years. By the time we get to that point, it needs to be repaired. We are looking at possibly changing entrance points and all that to try and create safer access points. So with the asphalting of the pump track and possibly of the Alder Street parking lot, we thought we could get some efficiencies by combining projects for reduced cost in asphalting. I've also been had conversations with Mr. Tony DeLuce regarding Riddell Road and the potential that it could be widened in the near future and how we can incorporate all that stuff within the same thing. So we're trying to take the pump track, get it designed, but somehow incorporate it in the following year or two to try and save money through the repaving process and design.
Councillor Stevens, good? Hey,
I do have another question though.
oh, sure, go ahead.
The shade shelters. On page 169, it says $70,000, and on page 175, it's down to $40,000. Just not sure why there's a discrepancy. And the second part of that is, how much does each shade shelter cost? Yeah.
Mr. Cosgrove, are you going to take that one? Okay.
Through Mayor Post to Councillor Stevens, we put in, I don't know if you've been to Fenley Park, we put in 5 or 6 shade shelters last year. The average cost when you look at the concrete and to put them in is about $7,000 or $8,000 a piece. So we are looking at adding more shade shelters to every kids park in Harvey Curry. Right now we currently have 1, and if you have a family show up, they basically take it. It is an area that does have some trees, but right now we feel shade shelters is great for the young families. It's a very, very busy splash pad and park system down there. And we think it would be beneficial to the community if we provided more shade structures for them. Difference in costing, I don't know why there's 2 different prices.
Who wants that one? What's that? Oh, Mr. Kelly, go ahead.
So yeah, through you, Mayor Post, this has to do with the reprioritization of projects. So it's not new money. It was 30,000 that was reprioritized towards this.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Oh, Ms. Savage, yep.
Thank you, Mayor Post. Councillor Stevens, if I may add, shelters are becoming increasingly popular. I know I've mentioned this before. I'm going to reiterate it. I came from the region of Peel, the town of Caledon, where we recognized a lot of our new residents in more dense neighborhoods are using their parks as their backyards. So they're using those parks from 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. at night, and they're looking for shelter. They're great stewards of the park. So I think in turn, we need to build our shelter inventory in the parks.
Thank you, Ms. Savage. Councillor Prendergast?
Thank you, Mayor Post, through you. I just had 3 comments / questions. The first one was just to piggyback off of what Deputy Mayor Taylor said regarding economic development. I am supportive of further consultation with professionals for strategic development as long as it aligns with the county's views. I see Orangeville as a municipal hub for the entire county, and our economic development is closely tied with them. So as long as there's some kind of cohesive view, I think it might be beneficial. Second, I just wanted to comment on the pump track. I think that would be a welcome addition to town. I know a lot of families travel to Alton to utilize that great facility, and the current BMX track is not really sustainable how it is, and it's kind of not that safe right now, in my opinion. And third, just about the shade shelters that were mentioned, that is something I've heard from residents time and time again, is we need more shade, especially at our water parks, because people are spending hours at those parks. And the town was congratulated recently from a resident just on the addition of the new shade shelters at Fenley. I heard that a lot of times. And the current, the more fixed shelters that we do have, they are revenue generating, right? We can rent those out for birthday parties and other things like that. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Prendergast. Councillor Sherwood, and then Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm drawing blank. Page 117 regarding library collections. No, this is nowhere to for anything regarding Darla and her team. They're fabulous. This is the 5th budget that I've sat in, and every year it comes in with a recommendation for the library collections to be over $200,000 per year. I realize that we need to update and constantly keep on top of the books and collections. Is it possible that perhaps staff could have this ready for the operating discussions? Could you provide some actuals for the past few years? Are they actually spending almost $200,000 in library collections? Because not to challenge them, but I know they're governed by a board and we just seem to always approve stuff for the library without really questioning them. I'm questioning, are we really needing to spend $200,000 a year to replace those, those items?
Ms. Savage, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Post. Councillor Sherwood. I am assured by the CEO of the library that last year they spent $172,000 on collections. Now, I had similar questions today, and I learned a lot about our library circulation system. I know that we have 80,000. We have 80,000 pieces within our collection. We turn it over at least once every year, so we're up to 172,000 go in and out of the door. I also know that there is high demand for electronic resources, and electronic resources are significantly more expensive. So if you buy the hard copy of the book, of the bestseller book, it's about $50. When you buy the electronic version, it's $109. The idea behind that is that there could meet more users, more people could read it. There's higher turnover rate, but it's still more expensive for that one unit. So again, the CEO mentioned $172,000 was spent last year on circulation.
So just a quick follow-up for my own satisfaction. Would it be possible for finance staff to get me the last 3 years of actuals for that?
Through you, Mayor Post, I would say finance staff's working on that right now. You'll definitely have it by tomorrow.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you. My question, I see the acting chief has showed up. My question is in regard to the master fire plan. A couple of things on that. First of all, we haven't completed the work on the original master fire plan that we did 10 years ago. I know a lot of it is covered in development fees, but there is still a cost with the master fire plan. And it's no secret that the county is currently looking into a county-wide type of hybrid fire service of some type. Wouldn't we be better to hold off until we find out how this study goes with the county before we go forward with a master fire plan? I know it's about 100 years since the last one, 10 years ago. So I don't know if there's a great rush to do a master fire plan this year. Thank you.
Ms. Savage, do you have any comments before acting chief is ready? No, you're good.
Acting chief.
Okay. Welcome to the hot seat, acting chief. We've got lots of fire questions, so you've arrived at the right time. We'll start with Councillor McIntosh's and then we'll go back. Can we just get the mic on? Yeah. Mike, there you go.
Through your worship to Councillor McIntosh. Yeah, so the budget was created just prior to the modernized multi-jurisdictional modernization plan from the county. I shortened that a little bit. Prior to that, and yeah, we're to the point where we need to start looking at our master fire plan. Unbeknownst, the multi-jurisdictional plan was coming up. So as far as looking at the actual what was in the master fire plan, we've completed quite a bit of it. A couple of large ticket items in regards to some technology stuff, some personnel, fire station. Pretty much it's been completed so we've had it since 2015. So I'd say we're kind of almost ahead of the schedule except for the big ticket items.
Mr. McIntosh?
Thank you. And the second part of my question, I guess, is like I agree, radios is an important part. You need them. Again, with the county doing this multi-jurisdictional, is this something we should be waiting for? You know, if we get radios, are they going to be able to talk to other departments in the county and such? I'm just wondering if some of these things are a bit ahead of its time with this study coming up. Thank you.
Acting Chief, go ahead.
Your worship to Councillor McIntosh. So presently, we've been in a long process. Everybody was aware of the Black Castle project was supposed to be the project to get us kicked off into the LMR and so forth in regards to our radios. So we've been putting radios back off a little bit. We're to the point where we do need to replace radio equipment and look at it pretty hard. We are starting to see some of it fail, some of it's coming end of life. So it is a health and safety in regards to our firefighters operating in hazardous conditions in regards to keep going with our radios and operating. As far as interoperability with other departments, we are planned into that we are fully interoperable with them.
Any additional follow-up? You're good? Okay, so if we're going to move into fire services, I'll start with Councillor Sherwood, and then we'll go Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Andrews.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you. Thank you for arriving on the hot seat. We've been anxiously awaiting your arrival. I'm going to also, my colleague mentioned about the fire master plan. I have a little concern with that as well. I know that the levy amount is only $25,000, again, small potatoes, but I'm wondering again, because we're in talks with the county on doing countywide services, it's really hard for me to sit here and replace vehicles or buy UTVs when I think let the county look after it, let the county pay for it. And but there are other things that I think are very critical, like bunker gear. We definitely need to do that. And your radios, again, you make a very good point. But the master plan is not sitting well with me because I think if the county does take it over, they're going to do a master plan too.
CAO Smith has a comment first. I'll turn it over to him.
Yeah, thank you very much. And through you, Mayor, and preempting what the acting fire chief may say. I have experience in studies that look to amalgamate fire services. Very rarely do they actually come through it with a recommendation to do that. And if they do, it's usually multiple years away. There's collective agreements that need to be considered. There's all sorts of consultation. So if this study or when this study proceeds, if the recommendation comes to do some level of amalgamation, my experience is that it would be multiple years after that. So we're probably looking, with all of those ifs, at least 5 years before any concrete action would happen. So I would just suggest that council keep that time frame in perspective of when you're making decisions to hold on to that. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow. If it happens, it'll happen in a number of years out.
My additional comment to that as well would be having a seat on the county council. It was a very tight vote as to whether we were even going to look at fire services. So I'm not confident how those recommendations would be taken anyways. But it's a discussion that needed to be had because, as we know, there are some municipalities that surround us that still operate using fire boards, which are not the fire marshal's office preferred way of governing fire services. And there's some challenges with the fire boards. We know that we've got service agreements with multiple municipalities, and we're already doing a lot of service for them. This study that the county is taking on, we asked the county to do it because they don't have any skin in the game right now. They're not operating fire services at all. So we've asked them to be the keeper of the study, but it's going to be done in consultation with all of the fire personnel that are existing within the county to try and figure out what we could do better, maybe what we could do more of, how we can shift things around. So I don't know that the recommendation will be an amalgamated fire service. It might be on the table, but I think CAO Smith makes a good point that there are lots of political pieces that would need to fall into place, as well as collective bargaining agreements and things of those sorts. So I think we're several years out from any changes to our fire service. Mr. Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Post. Just on the topic of studies in general, and I think it's an important point to make, which just opens up. We haven't talked about provincial legislation and the impacts of it too much this evening. As of our next update of the DC study, studies will become an ineligible service area. So when you spoke to only $25,000 of levy funding towards this, if it gets delayed to our next DC study period, there won't be DC eligible funding for it. So I just wanted to keep that in mind.
Thank you. That's a good clarification. Acting Chief, do you have something to add to that?
Sure. Your Worship, to Councillor Sherwood, in regards to, I understand the amalgamation or the reinventing the fire service. And I see what CAO Smith said in regards to time period. Fire services, we still have to remain ready to serve our people. So I think it has to be looked at in regards to we can look to the future, but where are we today and what do we really have to look at for today?
Thank you, Acting Chief. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to CAO Smith and to Mr. Kelly, I'm curious what your thoughts are. And if I'm putting you on the spot and it's unfair, I understand. I'd love a perspective on how do you feel about our fire agreement currently? do you think that the town of Orangeville is being fairly compensated for the work that we're providing for the other regions that are within our county?
Mr. Smith?
I will just comment very briefly because I don't have in-depth knowledge. I think we're on the track to be much better compensated. The last agreement that council approved moved the bar quite significantly. I think that internally we can improve our cost recovery tracking and make sure that we have true costs and the impact of all of those. So in summary, I think we're on the way to be a lot better than we were 3 months ago.
Deputy Mayor, while you've got the mic, did you want to go into some of your questions for Acting Chief?
I do.
Okay, and then I will go Councillor Andrews, then Councillor Prendergast.
So I guess from a line by line basis in here, and there isn't a ton of them. I certainly wouldn't want to talk to the fire hall. We know that we're doing that. We've agreed that we're going to do that. Could you speak to some of these other items that are in here? You know, the $100,000 items. I don't want to talk about the ladder truck. We know we need to do that. But, you know, is there anything in here in your mind that we could move out? And specifically what I'm thinking about is 2026, because the town will be in, you know, in a better position at that time. Is there things in here that we could potentially amortize over a longer period and do without, or elongate the equipment that we have to make it to 2026? And if there is a safety issue, I think you should call that out and say that there is a safety issue, because council, and I don't want to be a part of a council that makes a decision that says that the public is in jeopardy in any sort of way. This is an economic piece, but with public safety and of course your staff safety in mind.
So,
Go ahead. Yep.
Deputy Taylor, just going through the list here, as far as kind of looking through, bunker gear. It's a thing that we need. It's required. It's health and safety. We have stuff that's coming end of life, so deferring that. As you can see, it's a yearly contribution in regards to bunker gear. The other two I can speak of is, I'll say the command vehicle or deputy chief's vehicle, and also the replacement of car 104. So that's fleet basically. So in fleet, so we run a fairly tight, aggressive fleet management within fire services. So we have a few vehicles that do higher mileage. Once those higher mileage vehicles are moved into support roles, as far as maintenance and everything in regards to them, we're very aggressive in maintaining those vehicles. Our fleet is probably, it's very well maintained. So stretching vehicles is something in regards, as far as the deputy chiefs, we've already pushed it for a year. So we've already started to maneuver off the schedule of replacement for vehicles. Again, the car 104, which is a 3/4 ton pickup truck. Again, it could be deferred from this year to a following year. I wouldn't want to push it too far out. Again, it's part of that replacement process to maintain a fleet that's able to respond to calls for use of our people. And I would agree. So the fire master plan, it could be pushed off. Technically, we did it in 2015. 10 years is usually the life cycle on them. So we are kind of ahead of the game. That's why we put in for it, to be ready. Because again, the fire master plan kind of directs the fire services on where to go, how to operate to a certain degree. The UTV replacement, again, it's something we need. Our present one was 20 years old. It had an accident, so it's inoperable right now. Again, it's a tool we use for rescue, wildland firefighting, trail rescues. Again, valuable piece of equipment for our people to use.
Acting Chief, before you got here, there was a question about that vehicle, about how often it's used.
Yeah.
I can't remember who asked it, but somebody had asked that question. So And who uses it primarily? Which municipalities are you using it in primarily? Or is it being used within the boundaries of Orangeville as well? Is the other question.
Sure, Your Worship. It's used for all municipalities, including the town of Orangeville. We have a new rail trail access into the area of the trails. We have a large forested areas within town boundaries as well. We use it for access into there for wildland or grass fires, firefighting. Again, it's one of those tools you can use pretty much anywhere. If you have a large building fire, you can use it for the command vehicle. You can do this 360 on the vehicle. So it's a very versatile tool for us to use in regards to firefighting rescue capabilities.
And the other question was, how often is it used in calls? Somebody had asked that. I'm not sure who it was. I can't recall.
So, Your Worship, right now we've been kind of without due to the damage of the vehicle. So it's been inoperable. So we've been making do. We've had a couple of calls in the past that possibly could have been used. I've had a couple trail rescues into Mono, Island Lake conservation area as well. Those are just a couple that come to mind right off the hop. So,
Thank you very much. Councillor Andrews, and then Councillor Prendergast.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship, and to Acting Chief Richardson. Nice to have you here, and thank you. You did actually highlight very quickly two of the items that I wanted to get some clarification on, and this was in fact the replacement of the Deputy Chief's command SUV as well as Car 104, and you did reference the possibility of deferring it. But what was intriguing in your response there was the fact that these are part of the fire department's fleet, correct? So there's no connection whatsoever to the enterprise lease activity that we have within the municipality. Is that also correct? So we don't have any connection with that type of vehicle.
So Your Worship.
Yeah, that's okay.
So enterprise fleet management, it wasn't recognized within the initial portion of the fleet management. Because the vehicles are somewhat specialized. So example, the deputy chief vehicle was kind of in limbo last year in regards to getting it. Is it enterprise? Wasn't it enterprise? So it got pushed off. We missed an order period to get the vehicle because they're built. So they're classified as severe service vehicles. So we missed the window to replace the vehicle at the time. So and the pickup trucks along the same role in regards to severe service. So again, we looked at it as far as the savings in regards to the fleet management side of our side of it. Made more sense to keep going with the fleet side of how we're operating because it made sense in regards to saving money.
Okay. My second question, as per those two vehicles, are they currently maintained by the town mechanic within the Public Works?
Currently, they are not maintained by the town mechanic due to capacity and frequency of our vehicles being in for maintenance.
So whomever is taking care of the maintenance of those two vehicles, the recommendation is in fact they're close to end of life. Is that correct?
Again, so the vehicles are replacing, so I'll just use the deputy chief's vehicle as an example. So the deputy chief's vehicle and the chief's vehicle are their higher mileage vehicles. So those vehicles are taken and given to fire prevention after a service life of 3-4 years, depending on how the maintenance rolls out on them. And then it's rolled into a lesser mileage role. So fire prevention, they use it during the daytime. They go to their appointments. They do in their inspections or public education. So it doesn't get the high mileage, the hard driving that the emergency response vehicles would.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Councillor Prendergast and then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just to reiterate, which municipalities does Orangeville share a service agreement with for fire?
To Your Worship, to Councillor Prendergast, so Mono, Amaranth, and East Garifraxa.
Okay, thank you. I'm just thinking in reference to the UTV vehicle ask and the budget line. I know we market Island Lake often as a highlight of coming to Orangeville. And I just think that if someone was in a dire situation at Island Lake, a place that we advertise as a main tourist attraction, that we would be remiss to not offer them that same level of safety, especially since we do have the service agreement with the town of Mono and also Amaranth. Just also thinking of Menorah Park and all the beautiful trails we have that surround us. And you mentioned also the possibility of maybe fighting field fires, and with the advent of climate change and frequency of having more droughts, et cetera, it seems to me that might be a beneficial add to the budget line. And I just wanted to add my support to that.
I just wanted to add to that too, Councillor Prendergast, that when we negotiate our fire contracts with our member municipalities that we do offer fire services to, we do keep in mind the capital asks that we have, and they do contribute a portion of it. So to Deputy Mayor's point earlier, they are paying a portion of that capital need as part of their fire service agreements with us, because that's how they're worked out. So I know we got a bit of pushback from a few of them this time around, because there was such a significant increase to how they were paying us for their services. And it's for a few reasons. And one is because we do have some major capital projects that they are responsible to help us fund. And yes, Orangeville does still pay for the majority of it, but the other municipalities are paying as part of that, because that's considered when those contracts are formed. Deputy Mayor, you had another question?
Yes, and I think this is to you, Mr. Kelly. The vehicles. So, they're an expensive layout, and I would say the average Canadian now probably doesn't pay cash for a vehicle, just like they wouldn't pay cash for a home, right? Wouldn't this be on a loan? And why is it couldn't we amortize this out as opposed to a lump sum piece on these two things? Or is that just not how we would, to me, even if I had to pay the supplier, I would still pay my loan back over a period of time. And yet this is sort of crunching us. Instead, it should be 15 or 18,000 versus 85.
Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Post, obviously with the resources that the town has for a vehicle of this size, probably wouldn't be advantageous to take a multi-year loan from the provider. However, amortizing it over a multi-year period is a possibility, right? Recognizing it as a prepaid expense and amortizing over probably 3 to 5 years. I will note that whatever reduction you're having in your levy contribution, say to a project such as this, isn't a reduction in the capital levy. We've already brought forward to council the need for $3.5 million. It would shift the reliance on debt financing on some other projects or use of reserve funds. So I just want to be clear about that. If we're targeting specifically levy funded projects, that's not going to reduce the levy requirement for this year. It's going to reduce how much we're drawing from reserves or leaning on debt. So hope that clarifies.
CAO Smith, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And just follow up on the Deputy Mayor's question. Tomorrow we're going to be speaking about operating budget, and one of the requests is for a fleet supervisor to help with the maintenance, but also develop a fleet strategy. We don't have a fleet reserve formalized strategy, and that would smooth out these costs. So if the fire vehicle is $100,000 and it's a 10-year replacement, we should be contributing $10,000 a year into the reserve. And then when we're ready to buy that vehicle, we've got the money there. So that's something on our plan to develop over 2024. And when you see our budget presentation next year, you'll see our fleet strategy and how the life cycle of each vehicle. I was delighted to find out, because I didn't know, that in fire we have a plan on how the vehicles cycle through, and hopefully, because hope is not a plan. We will have a plan for all of our vehicles when they enter our system, how they are worked through our entire corporation to get the best value for them.
Thank you. Councillor Sherwood.
Oh, yes, Your Worship, through you to the acting chief. You mentioned that we do own or had owned a UTV, and that it was in an accident. Is it beyond repair? Did we not go through insurance for to repair and get it back on the road?
Acting Chief, go ahead.
Worship to Councillor Sherwood. The vehicle is damaged. It's a 2004. It was donated to the fire department through a fundraising effort of a deceased firefighter who passed away. it was a fundraising effort and brought forward to the fire department. So it was used when it came to us. We bought it from a neighboring fire department. And when it did have its accident, the frame was twisted on the vehicle, and trying to get a new frame for it so basically it would be unsafe right now to operate, but it was by a third party, and the frame cannot be replaced on it. So it's end of life per se. It's been basically wrote off.
Thank you. Any additional questions regarding fire? Let's start there. Deputy Mayor.
CAO Smith, if I can just ask one last question. So would it not be in our best interest to delay some of these vehicles one more year and wait for the fleet policy and then amortize it as you're saying? Because I think that would, although the end result would be more expensive on an annual basis, if it would be beneficial to us from a cash flow perspective to do that. And I understand there'd be a need. So maybe the need is greater in terms of time versus an elongated financial piece. But if we could wait a year, it sounds like might be a good thing to do.
Yeah, I will comment. I heard the acting chief say that that the first vehicle has already been deferred. So, we're keep pushing those out, and that definitely runs risk. I also know that when we look at our capital 10-year forecast, it gets lean as it goes out. I can tell you, when we're all sitting here in 2032, this won't be the capital budget at the time. So the assumption that we're going to have more money in future, I think is not as accurate a reflection of what the capital budget is. So that first vehicle, I wouldn't suggest that we push out. It's already been pushed out. The second vehicle, the Car 104, I would defer to the acting chief and his perspective on that.
Acting Chief, over to you.
Your worship, to Deputy Taylor. As deferral, as far as that one, it would be satisfactory to defer that one vehicle. Again, it's a support vehicle. It helps us in regards to moving equipment, people, back up as a response vehicle as well. Again, the caution would be if you push it out too far, then the scheduled maintenance or replacement plan would be kind of tilting the other way then.
Thank you. Any last questions for fire? Any last questions for community services? Councillor Stevens, go ahead.
Thank you. Through your worship. You're off the hot seat here. Back to Ms. Savage though. Through the library, the makerspace and the $30,000 in furniture. Is that a need right now or just a want?
Ms. Savage.
Thank you, Mayor Post. Councillor Stevens. Sorry, I'm just checking here. So there's $30,000 in the capital budget for furniture. I did double check with the CEO of the library, trying to get a better understanding of what's being replaced. It is the publicly used furniture, tablets that the staff use to do real-time inputs, book displays, chairs and tables, staffing furniture. A lot of that needs to be replaced next year. The makerspace is an upgrade. So we know that we had $30,000 through a grant or around that amount for a grant in the previous year. We are working on building that space. It is contingent on a headcount that we'll discuss tomorrow. But we know that the upgrade allows us to keep in line with how quickly technology is advancing. With this upgrade, we would like to purchase a Cricut Maker 3 accessories and tools and supplies, as well as a new scanning functionality is now available for 3D printer that we've already purchased. So these are upgrades to existing equipment that we already have.
Thank you. If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
On page 172, the dog park. I know you're asking for fencing. Haven't heard where the new dog facility may go.
Ms. Savage.
Thank you, Mayor Post. Councillor Stevens. Next Monday, you will hear we have a report coming forward to talk about dog park and train station. But just to preface that report, we are still looking for a location for the dog park. But once we do find something, we know that construction will start happening to the Highlands area north of the Orangeville Mall next spring. And when that happens, we need to be ready to go to move elsewhere and pop up a temporary dog park. The cost of chain link fencing is increasing. We're just trying to keep with that commercial, with the indexing of that price, so that when we are ready to build that temporary space, we're ready to go.
Thank you. And my last final question for Ms. Savage, or maybe Mr. Cosgrove. Rotary Park, I presume it's going to go back into this year's budget. Is that just the same money that we were allocating from last year, or 2023, the $1 million?
Through you, Mayor Post. Councillor Stevens, I know what we're using the money for, but as far as financially, whether it was here last year, sorry, I'll refer to Mr. Cosgrove.
Mr. Smith, go ahead.
If you just give us a minute, our finance team will answer that question.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, just confirming that it's all carry forward money. This isn't new money being asked for that.
You need clarification on what it's for? Is that what you're asking for as well?
Mr. Cosgrove, if he doesn't mind.
You, Mayor, Post to Councillor Stevens. Are you asking just strictly the $1 million? So in 2022, we had $75,000 approved to put in a playground structure. Last year, there was a request for $1 million to start the redevelopment of Rotary Park, which would include a new playground structure and the consultant's fees in order to survey out the entire park, so we know exactly where each phase and each piece of the development needs to be placed within that park, because there are expansions to the tennis courts that were proposed, pickleball courts, artificial skating loop, realigning of the soccer field, and some new lighting eventually down the road. So instead of coming through last year and asking for the original $11 million to do the development, we broke it down to $1 million to do it in phases. So the first phase that we're working on currently right now is the surveying of the park. But along with that project, I'm also working with Infrastructure Services, because they have to run a new water line from Second all the way up to Zares. So we didn't want to go ahead and do the playground structure first and then find out a water line needed to go in. So we are working with a consultant right now. They are in the process of working with engineers to develop the water line. We are hoping that will start construction in April. It'll be finished sometime June, July. But while that is being developed, we will also be doing the playground, which will include stakeholder involvement, community involvement. So we have consultant fees and a playground structure. If I use Every Kids Park as an example, that playground structure, not the splash pad, just the playground structure, in 2019 was $380,000. I look at, with all the development that we're doing with Rotary Park, this is going to become a destination area. And I really believe the playground has to reflect that as well. So we will be looking at, if Every Kids Park was 380, we're probably going to be looking $500,000 or $600,000. Now, Rotary Club of Orangeville is also partnering with us for part of the playground structure, and they are raising funds through the RibFest program every year. They're trying to raise money, very similar to how we did Fenley Park Splash Pad. So that is what that funding is for right now. So we are hoping that whenever we get a playground structure and we do stakeholder involvement and the community group involvement, as well as Rotary members of council, that we can actually put in a playground that could also become a destination for families.
Thank you, Mr. Cosgrove. Deputy Mayor, you had a comment?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just on the dog park quickly, I know the county has property in town, McCannell. I don't know if that's something that we're looking at, but we should. And the other commentary is on page 142 of this document. And I know we're talking about 2024, but I think if we're going to look out, we should also talk about some of the other obligations in here. And in 2026, it talks about $2 million for Tony Rose facility upgrades. And there's a few other things in here, another $200,000 for And I'm just confused by that. I'm not suggesting that by 2026 we would have a new building. That will not happen. But I just think as a group, we should be talking a little bit more about the building and putting a nickel into the building. And I know even if you're going to tear down a building, you still need to maintain a building until you're ready to take down a building. And probably $2 million is a drop in a bucket for a facility that size. But when you're looking at our budget, it's concerning to me. So maybe it's just a comment that I think we'd better have a conversation as a group, or my suggestion is we'd have a conversation as a group about what we're going to do about that, because I'm not excited about it. I don't want to do that. It'd be great to understand it. And maybe it's not a question tonight.
You, Mayor Post, to Deputy Mayor Taylor. Those budget years that you were just referring to were actually pushed out, deferred. They were supposed to be next year and the year after. We moved them out in hope that we would have a Tony Rose facility assessment completed. We've gone out twice now with that tender and RFP, and we've got 0 returns. So right now we need to do that. As you stated, that depending how all these assessments come back and consultants and stakeholder involvement, either way, somewhere down the line, we're either going to have to do some type of renovations or some type of maintenance to maintain the facility until we get a determination of how we're going to handle that facility that's about 50 years old right now. No matter what we do to that facility, in order to do it, Alder has to be prepared to take on what we need to do at Tony Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Cosgrove. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, not sure who's going to answer this, but I'm page 161 regarding the Alder Pool excess soils removal at a cost of 50,000 levy. Has there ever been thought or consideration of putting it out there like free fill, come and get it? Because isn't there some places that need fill and you come, you truck it away and you can have it, or maybe generate revenue rather than an expense to us? I'm not sure who's going to answer that.
Who wants that one? Mr. Cosgrove, go ahead.
Mayor Post to Councillor Sherwood. The amount of excess soil there came out of the front. It is a lot of clay. It's also excess soil that came out from inside of the building that was stored out there. So it had to be moved off site so we could continue with the project. My understanding is it's tandem axles of truckloads. Like we have truckloads that need to go, and it's very expensive to move. I don't have the exact fee for one truckload, but it's numerous truckloads, and we don't have anywhere else in town that would want it. And I don't know how fast we could get rid of it. It's being stored right now at one of our infrastructure services site. And I don't know how fast we could get rid of it with people with pickup trucks.
My thought on this was free to good home.
Was there any other community services? Go ahead, Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you. I'm just going to go back to Rotary Park and the tennis club. I think it's fantastic that 70,000 will be put into repairing and resurfacing the tennis courts because they look very bad based on the photos. And I just wanted to ensure that the water line construction won't impact the resurfacing, or that they're timed in such a way where we won't see duplication of efforts. Many in town have made comments about the rail trail and Avalon and just how the timing just didn't really align perfectly there, beyond anyone's control. You know, sometimes that happens, but if we just have a bit of foresight going into these next projects, knowing that Rotary Park will be redeveloped, it's a lot of money to put into the tennis courts, but they do appear to be almost unusable right now, and it is a very popular destination for residents.
Thank you, Councillor Prendergast.
Through you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Through you, Mayor Post to Councillor Prendergast. I might need to defer that to Mr. Curry, as the water line is his project. My understanding is that the water line will approximately be about 20 feet into the ground, below ground surface. We are looking at a way of, instead of having multiple connections through there, there'll be one at 2nd Street and one farther out closer to Zares. So if there's ever any issues, we don't have to service what's under the tennis courts, because it will be over top eventually once we add the 5th court in there. The consultants and engineers have said it would probably be very minimal that we'd have to move a tennis court to get to it. I can defer to Mr. Curry if he's the expert.
Okay, sounds like you nailed it. So we're good. Councillor McIntosh, and then I'm going to call a break after that. I'm cognizant of the time that we're at. Yeah. Okay. Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. I won't be long. In regards to the tennis courts, I just wondered what the deal is with that because, again, it's a town building. The public doesn't have access to it because you have to be a member of the tennis club. And yet we're putting $100,000 to repair a building that the public doesn't have access to. I just wonder if I could get some clarification on that. Thank you.
Savage?
Thank you, Mayor Post. Councillor McIntosh. So right now, the agreement with the tennis group, they have operating agreements. So it is not open to the public. We are renegotiating the agreement because it has expired, and we're making sure that there is so many hours a month available for public use. It would be posted ahead of time. So you'll see that in the renewal of the updated agreement. Anyone can go and get an inexpensive membership to be a member and have all that the club offers. The club does cover all the operating expenses. So yes, the town owns the building, but it's entirely up to the club to be able to operate and maintain that space. Any capital, right now they're in the agreement, there's nothing that refers to shared cost for capital. So it is the town's responsibility. We've identified this as an issue. It's impeding their program, as Councillor Prendergast mentioned. It is a highly sought after program. They are busy, they are full. It is a well-used service, and that's why community services staff is recommending that we continue to invest in that asset so the club can continue doing what they're doing.
Thank you, Councillor McIntosh. I'm going to call a break because I am aware that we've been at this for over 2 hours. I was hoping we could get through community services first, but it looks like there's still 3 or 4 more questions. So let's take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 9:21. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're going to get back. We are still on the community services section of the budget. I apologize for breaking partway through, but I'm cognizant that we've been here over 2 hours. So I believe Deputy Mayor was next. Councillor Sherwood and Councillor McIntosh? No, Councillor Andrews, sorry. Okay, Deputy Mayor, you go first.
Just as a review, we were at the tennis courts and there was a great question by yourself about the tennis courts. And I just wanted to say that, you know, you were trying to articulate the role and the relationship, and I just couldn't leave it because the tennis courts are actually the people who run the tennis courts are trying to interact with the public. They want the public to enjoy those tennis courts and be out there and participate as much as possible. And I just wanted to make that point that they are good community people and they're certainly trying. So I think it makes sense to do what you're doing. You look very confused at what I'm trying to say, but no, they I just wanted to make that correlation that they're trying to link in with the rest of us. And if you haven't tried tennis, link in with them and go try it. And they'll work with you to be able to do that. That's it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Sherwood, was it you next? And then Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Cosgrove. Going back to the dog park, are we able to reuse any of the fencing once we dismantle it?
Mr. Cosgrove?
To Councillor Sherwood, it's my understanding, once you remove the meshing off there and you start pulling the poles out with the concrete on underneath, they will bend. There could be more damage to them and they wouldn't be reusable to be inserted into a new temporary dog park. The meshing on the dog park itself has already been stretched, and it'd be better to get money through scrap metal than try and reutilize what's already there.
Thank you, Mr. Cosgrove. Councillor Andrews?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And not to get into the weeds in any way, shape, and form, but you caught my attention when you were referring to the water line and, of course, the connection to the resurfacing of the tennis club and, of course, the new play structure. And I like how you framed that. But just a little bit to the north of that is, in fact, the skate park. Now, is the skate park potentially going to be affected by the construction? I see that Mr. Curry is saying no, so I don't need to go any further. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Was there any other questions about community services? No. Well, maybe I could have waited. Okay. All right, you're off the hot seat for now, Ms. Savage. We will turn it, and Mr. Cosgrove. So now we will move into infrastructure services. And I think the best way, hang on one second here. Just trying to get back to my table of contents. I think the best way to deal with it is probably to look at the capital works projects first, then move into some of the public works projects and some of the other stuff. But we can probably move around a little bit, but I will turn it over to the team. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you very much. I would love to understand, Mr. Koslak, the road surfacing program. As I've read it, it's 12.2 million that we've got set aside as a total. My understanding from previous presentations that we've had from Mr. Curry is that we needed something even more elaborate than that. What is the deficit on that particular line in of itself? And is there a recommendation to further improvement from where we are? Or is this where we should be? Or are we hurting ourselves by not doing something more?
Mr. Koslak?
No, through your worship, this is one of the items that if you look at the deferred project list, there has been a reduction in what was proposed from Originally, we had roughly $1.5 million per year, and it's been reduced to, I believe it's roughly 1 million per year as part of the project. So when we had our study on the asset management, they were recommending more of the 2 to 3 million per year. So what we have is at least a start in the program. It'll get the ball rolling. And I think a lot of it after the first year, we'll see the benefits of it. And then we can consider in 2025, the option to increase the program.
Thank you, Mr. Koslak. Councillor McIntosh, then Councillor Stevens, then Councillor Sherwood.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Koslak, for your presentation. A couple of quick questions. The first one, I don't know if you'll have an answer for. You were talking about rehabilitation of the Mill Creek River. Would that change that area to no longer be a floodplain? Do you know?
Mr. Koslak?
Yeah, through your worship, it's still going to be, I guess, a natural wetland, but it won't be a flooding issue. Part of it towards the fire hall is more of a significant wetland. I don't think it's a provincially significant wetland, but it's a wetland, so that'll maintain. But as part of it, it'll be reforming the creek. I think over the last 50 years, the creek has basically filled in and sedimented in. As a result, it comes on the north side of the former railway tracks, and that's where a lot of the flow issues. So it's reestablishing it on the south side of the tracks and having the flow go through that area. So it'll be a naturalized area that shouldn't flood. And then the north of the old railway tracks will be more of a rear yard ditch almost for those properties. So it would just be more localized flow that would go through those areas.
Okay, thank you. My second question, I'm just looking for confirmation. Your emerald ash borer and the 80,000 that we're putting in for the tree canopy, $268,000 to be spent on replacement trees this year?
Through your worship, I'd have to confirm exactly how much is spent, but we've been really going hard for the last 2 months at planting trees. So I know even this week they're out planting trees on it. So until the ground's frozen, it's a great chance to be able to transplant trees. Once the ground's frozen, we won't be able to move it, but I can confirm the exact numbers we've spent, but we've had a really good program this fall of getting trees in the ground.
Thank you.
Councillor Stevens, and then Councillor Sherwood.
Thank you, Your Worship. My first one is on page 230, the Hanson Bridge. Last year, you, or not you personally, a request of 350,000 was added, and next year it'll be 695,000. I guess once that's done, are we going to be able to start building the road?
Through your worship, the bridge is substantially completed. There's a few more payments left for the developer in finalizing the work. Part of the road construction will be done by the developer. It's privately owned property currently, so the town won't be able to construct it. We've been discussing with the developer, and we'll hear more about it in the new year with their anticipated timeframe. They're trying to look at some of the options for the development, and they'll provide more information on their timing in the springtime, and we can let council know when construction will start.
So if I may, what's the 695 for?
Through your worship, the 695 is for the final payments to close off the account from the construction. It's for some of the extras that were done as part of the work.
Thank you. And on page 202, the planning reviews, you have an official plan of 180,000 and a Broadway plan of 150,000. Can we, I understand we need plans and how we have to look at things moving forward. We spend a lot of money outsourcing things. Can we not do some of these things in-house?
Through your worship, part of the reason we outsource things is you can get the expertise for it. One of the things with the Broadway plan, we're trying to look at sort of both ends of Broadway, what it should look like in the future. There's a lot of redevelopment areas down by, I'll say, Total Video and that area. So we want to try and look, what's the look and feel we want? Because if you don't have that master plan, you don't have something the developers are all looking to tie into. And then you'll have one person doing it one way, one another. This way we'll have a look and feel that we want in the whole area. And then everybody will have to join into that look. So it'll look, by the time we're done, I think it'll be money really well spent. So all the developments have a good look and feel in the area, and it's a consistent approach for it.
Is your comment on that piece? Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Sherwood. It's just a comment.
I just wanted to offer affirmation. Like, I think that study is absolutely essential to that area. And everybody needs to understand that the area from basically Town Hall East on Broadway over the next 10-ish years is going to be entirely different than we see today. And how many times have you driven through a neighborhood and said, oh, that doesn't make sense. Why would they build that there? And it doesn't look like it even belongs here. And I was kind of, if we don't set our way with the developers before they come to us and start telling us what they want us to do, it's going to be a hodgepodge. And I think we have a real opportunity. Candidly, I'll just be honest, I think it could look a little nicer than it is right now, and it's our gateway to our community. If we don't grasp it now, we'll never have a chance. It's super, super important for our town in the future that we do that study that you're referring to. So thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Sherwood?
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Koselak. First of all, I want to say I'm so excited to see the PXO for Broadway and Wellington. Long overdue, and I'm really excited to see that in there. A comment, page 220. I know it's the Boulevard tree inventory. There was a motion for us to add this, but I have since rethought this and not to have the money removed from the budget. I think it would be better allocated to go to sidewalks, which we badly need, and road resurfacing. I just want confirmation that we already have money in a budget for tree replacement, and then this is in addition.
Through your worship, we do have money budgeted for trees. I think this is an additional item for the emerald ash borer. When we had a lot of the ash trees died in town, we're still catching up on replacing a few of those. I think this is the last year or the second last year of the program for it. But anytime we can increase the funding towards sidewalks, that's something I'd support strongly too.
So personally, I just feel, not that I'm against trees, we already have money in the budget for trees. We get calls all the time about people complaining about sidewalks. I'd rather have that money allocated to sidewalks, road resurfacing. The CVCA provides a tree planting program, so we're looking after that for additional trees, and there are trees in the budget. So like I say, I'm not asking it to be removed. I'm asking for maybe perhaps to reconsider where to reallocate it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Any additional questions, Deputy Mayor?
I just wanted to comment on that and offer my clarification of how that story went. And the story is that we agreed as a council team, we put forward a recommendation that we would spend an additional $80,000 on trees. And that's where that money's coming from. So I would still hold firm that I think that's the right thing to do and disagree. But I would also agree on the sidewalk piece that, you know, this is a major issue in town, and you walk through and you can see it, but they're not connected. Like, trees are one thing, they're completely different. Sidewalks are completely different. If we want to do sidewalks, then we would have to add money to the budget for sidewalks, but it doesn't mean you take it from trees, right? They're totally different things. So I would hold firm on the trees, but I'd love to have a sidewalk discussion.
Do you want to start the sidewalk discussion right now? Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, through your worship. My point is we already have money in the budget for trees. So this to me is an additional ask that I'd like to reallocate to a different project.
Mr. Koselak, go ahead.
Through your worship, just want to mention we do have a SLC considered in the operating budget for tomorrow's discussion, and that is for increasing the sidewalk replacement. So we do have an increase proposed as part of the budget. It won't fix everything. It brings us more down to a 3 or 4 year plan to address all the deficiencies, but there is an increase proposed, and maybe that can be a discussion as part of tomorrow's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Koselak. Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you. I just wanted to add something about the trees. It was my understanding when we approved the 80,000 additional funds that could also be used to build staff capacity to study the results of the tree canopy assessment, and also take a look at the survey results that we just got back, and to develop a plan for increased planting in the future, and possibly the creation of a tree preservation bylaw on private property. So it would also be used for that in addition to planting. And I would even move that we would change that budget line from Boulevard tree inventory to something else that's more reflective of what we agreed to, which would be maybe urban tree canopy plan or something to that effect, which would be better reflective of what that would be spent for. But it would be for planting trees, but also developing a strategy to reach that 40% by 2040. And I'm just looking here, I mean, we're spending $500,000 on flood mitigation. Trees are proactive flood mitigation. So if we're really trying to think forward thinking, planting more trees will be beneficial. And 100%, Deputy Mayor, trees and sidewalks are not mutually exclusive. We can have both. Okay.
Mr. Koselak.
Yeah, through your worship, I think that flexibility that the councillor commented on would be beneficial. That way it can be used for trees, or if there is study, we do have some older areas of town that we may need to look at in more detail, because there is different dynamics depending on the neighborhood. So having that flexibility to use that money for other studies would be beneficial.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stevens.
Sorry, my last one. How can I word this? In the future, when tenders go out and they come back and you award the contract, is there a way that we could pick the best contractor who has maybe the supply on hand, and not that the projects get put back month after month after month?
Mr.
And I know that's really hard, but
Yeah, through your worship, one of the problems about public procurement is typically you have to take the lowest price. You can't take somebody who's local, even though they're a couple dollars more. One of the things we're looking at for some of the different projects is, instead of a tender, doing a request for proposals. So one of the things we're looking at with the transit is to get proposals on the buses instead of a tender. When you specify in a tender, you get what you get, and quite often it's the low price. We're trying to look at some of the different options. And one of the things we'd like to try and look at for projects in the future, the option of pre-qualify. So if we can do tenders or requests for proposals where we pre-qualify the contractors, you know you're going to get quality contractors, whoever gets the bid. So for some of the projects, we want to try and look at that option in the future.
Deputy Mayor.
So that's my note too, and it's along the lines of, do you think that you have everything you need? And the criteria is, just as Councillor Stevens has said, it'd be great if we could line it up so that our timelines are more respected. You know, the material is here for sure, and then the other piece is, do we have enough money set up? And I hate to use the word slush, but it's awful when you come back, right? I know you don't like doing it. We don't like hearing it. The public can't stand it. It'd be great if we had costed these things out with a little bit of room, so that we don't know, like we don't have to have that discussion. So it'd be great if somehow we could change our agreements. And my sense is it's an industry thing, and you're probably pretty frustrated sitting over there. As councillors that have to, that want to be accountable to the public, it's really hard to sit here and have another delay and things not show up and the cost overruns. And I'd say we're on a streak. So it'd be great in 2024 if somehow these could be written in a way, and I'm sure you're probably thinking, you know what, you dirty councillor, they are written that way. But there must be something else that we can do, because what we're doing now isn't ideal, right? It's really causing strain.
Well, Mr. Koslek, go ahead.
Through your worship, one of the things I guess we'll have as part of the budget discussion tomorrow is we're looking at getting a couple more staff bodies to help with delivering the projects. What I'd like to try and do is get the tenders prepared and out earlier in the year. I think in the past, we've had some issues with not having a tender going out till May, and then it closes in July. Construction starts in the fall. It's hard to get something completed. So if we have a little bit more resources, we can try and get things ready. So when the budget's approved, first week of January, we put our tenders out. That way contractors can order materials, get everything done. One of the projects is for that new water tower we talked about near Well 5. We put the tender out now. So that way the contractor, once it's awarded, they'll have 3 or 4 months to get all the materials ready and ordered and delivered. So hopefully that one, we don't have delays with materials. I think that's the big trick, getting the tenders out awarded earlier, give the contractor time to get their materials ordered. Because until you get a purchase order and an approved contract, they can't commit to ordering the materials. So the sooner we do that, the sooner they can order it, and it would really help our process.
Mr. Smith, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor. I just wanted to make 2 comments. One is that we experience a public rhetoric that you experience as well. I just like to remind you and the community that there are many, many projects that are delivered on time, are delivered under budget or on budget. We speak about the ones that don't. We forget the ones that are. So that I think that's an important thing. The other element of this is that In many of these cases, these are private sector companies that are experiencing supply chain issues, labor shortages, challenges getting appropriate permits over the appropriate time. So it's private sector companies that are having this experience. That translates to municipal staff and elected officials bearing the brunt of that. So it's a message that we're trying to change, that this isn't, some of these delays and challenges are not as a result of municipal work. It's a result of the reality of private sector companies and private sector contractors. It's experiencing these challenges.
Thank you for that, Mr. Smith. Any additional questions on the infrastructure budget? No. Okay. At the will of council, then, I'm going to maybe deter from what our agenda says, if everybody's okay with it. Before I ask for a recommendation, I know that there are some folks in the gallery who would like to ask some questions. If council's okay with it, I would like to move question period up to have an opportunity to have all those questions answered before we move to a recommendation or any motions, if everybody's good with that. Deputy Mayor, yep.
Mr. Koslak, the thing that's on my mind most is, so again, I heard our CIO, and I don't want to make sure, again, I think so highly of staff, so I don't want anybody thinking that I'm running down your department in any stretch. That's not it at all. It's the circumstances that we're in. However, I guess my ask would be through this budgetary process to be able to hit what we need to hit and avoid the issues that we're having. Do you feel comfortable that you have what you need to lay out the plan that you just did? Like, are you going to be able to hire the other people that you have based on what you put forward to council tonight? Or do you need something further to help you for next year so that we don't go through this?
Yep. Through your worship.
Mr. Koslak.
As part of the discussion tomorrow, we are looking at a couple positions to help with it. One of it's a roads project manager. Currently in our capital group, we have a manager and 2 staff members that are working on the water and wastewater. We don't really have anybody to lead the roads program. So I'd like to be able to have somebody that can lead the program. In the fall and winter, they can do quantities, measuring curbs, evaluating roads, get the tender out in January, like I mentioned, and then be able to help monitor the projects as things go on. So we'd like to get that body early on. I think that's a crucial part of our work. And we talked a little bit about the fleet mechanic, just to be able to develop that fleet management strategy so we can use equipment for different purposes, be able to maintain the equipment. I think some of those resources are just very important to having successful projects. But we do rely on third-party partners. So some of the things we have to try and rely on their work too. So, and hopefully with the supply chain issues getting better, it'll become a problem less and less in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Koslak. Madam Clerk, do I need a motion to move question period up? Do you need that reflected in the minutes somewhere? I just need a nod of approval from council. Are we good? Everybody good? Okay. Unofficial vote tallied. Let's move up question period. First of all, was there anybody on the line? No? Okay. Was there anybody in the gallery wishing to ask a question? We're going to keep our questions to a limited time. Go ahead, Mr. Ramsey. You can go ahead first. Remembering that we are on capital only, so please keep your questions to capital. Operating we can deal with tomorrow. So capital questions, if you can give us your name and address and go ahead with your question. Can we just turn on the mic too? Thank you very much.
My name is Noel Ramsey. I live here in Orangeville. I'm going to be just going through an email that I sent to council with regards to the capital budget that was published so far, the preliminary one. So I understand that there is a desire from finance to correct where funds are drawn from to pay for budget items. However, I have a great concern with the results of the budget that is presented. Because of the high taxes back in 2019, I believe that all of you on council are aware of the massive effort put forward by many of the residents during the campaign of the previous council to address the high and growing costs of policing. Back then, we had the highest municipal taxes in Ontario, and our policing costs made up 21% of our budget. For those of you who may not have been close to the financial issues at the time, or for those of you who are new to the town in the last 5 years, the town paid for a consultant who, along with work from town staff, forecasted that we could save $61 million over 16 years by switching to the OPP from the local police. And I must stress, a lot of people in town and on council did not believe this at the time. Now that we have switched, or since we have switched, I like to say, while the first 4 years of policing would still be very high, going forward with the new OPP policing model was forecasted to save us $3.8 million in 2024. Now the news is even better than forecast, as I understand, the 2024 OPP savings is going to be $4 million. With approximately $400,000 equaling 1% of our tax levy, this $4 million in savings should reduce the levy in 2024 by a whopping 10%. I'd like to repeat that. With switching to the OPP this year coming, our taxes should go down 10% for that action that took place. However, the proposed budget presents a 4.5% tax levy increase. In reality, it means this budget is a 14.5% or $5.8 million higher than it should be. And the question is, because of what? Throughout the budget, many items are paid for out of the reserves or by what's referred to as reprioritized funds. But at the same time, $3.9 million is being added into the reserves because they were so depleted. Keep in mind that only $961,000 needed to be added to the reserves last year or in this year in 2023. Note, you can only say the price of concrete has gone up significantly so many times, which we've heard. It's more apparent that many items are being stuffed into this budget, wiping out the significant savings realized by converting to the OPP. The move to the OPP was to lower our taxes, not to provide the town a chance to go on a spending spree. You have gone from saving 10%, switching to the OPP, to increasing our taxes by 4.5%. I also note that last year, when you did the outlook of the forecast for the year 2023, 2024, 25, and 26, we were looking at tax increases for many years going out of 2 to 3%, between 2 and 3%. They're all 2% plus. Now you're looking at 4.5% for all those years. Not only were you not saving that 10%, but you have recalculated our out year taxes for additional 2% more than you had last year. I just want to make sure that the residents of Orangeville understand that the savings that we got by switching to the OPP is being wiped out by this budget that you're looking at. And my question is, and I've heard various answers, but the bottom line is, you're putting lots of things in there that seem to be, yes, we need it, yes, we need it. You're wiping out the savings that we have realized. Regardless of what you agree to tonight and in the next budget meetings, we are saving 10% from that one budget item many years back that we switched to the new police force. What you're doing tonight and in these subsequent budgets is reversing that savings.
Deputy Mayor would like to make a comment, and then I will turn it over to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So there is the savings on the OPP for sure, but there is a payback for the next 5 years of $20 million on a line of credit to pay for the dismissal of the of the Orangeville Police Force. So there's $5 million that is being paid this year on the line of credit. So that therefore wipes out the savings of this year. At some point, it looks like you'll get savings, but you're not going to get it for 5 years.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I will turn it to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Post. Thank you for your comments, Deputy Mayor Taylor. So, yeah, I did receive a copy of that, your comments. I just want to be clear on the 2 nights of this budget for a reason. Tonight, we're talking about a portion of the OPP savings that's being utilized. That's towards cleaning up a backlog within the capital program, building a sustainable capital program for the town. The impetus for building a sustainable capital program comes through the asset management plan that this council is on board with approving. The need for municipalities to find sources, own source revenues, to clear a major backlog in infrastructure spending. The $4 million in savings has created an opportunity for this town to start taking steps towards clearing that backlog without asking for significant tax increases to do so.
Excuse me.
The other
just said that we're not saving the $4 million.
Is it okay if I continue? Thanks. The other component is over the past 4 years successfully, council has approved levy increases that were at or below inflation, usually well below inflation. I think on average we're at 1.7%. In order to achieve that, there was, and you've noticed the term, I've used it several times throughout this budget, non-sustainable revenue streams put in. That's not a poor practice. It was a way to keep levy increases at a reasonable level while they awaited the OPP savings to come to fruition. This year is them coming to fruition, those savings, but it's also an opportunity to right size some of those previous decisions. What we've put forward in the budget is we feel a responsible, fiscally responsible approach to not taking those savings and, as you've coined, like spending or throwing money in other areas, but putting money towards capital infrastructure funding that's critical to this town. We've talked this evening about sidewalks, about trees, about every asset possible that's underfunded right now. And this is an opportunity to start finding funding without asking for significant tax increases to do so. So I do stand behind staff, all of staff here that are bringing forward a budget that I feel appropriately utilizes these savings. And that's the budget we brought forward to council.
Can I say something?
Sure, go ahead.
That's a very clear explanation. I'm glad you phrased it that way. I have no problem with using the savings to catch up and correct things, but I think it's clear that the residents know that the $4 million that we have saved from the policing switch is being used to correct these projects that fell behind and need to be caught up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Was there anybody else in the gallery wishing to ask a question? Oh, sure. Go ahead, Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. Through you to Deputy Mayor, did I hear you correctly saying that it's $20 million transition costs? Since when did that figure
There's
come
a
out?
line of credit that needs to be repaid. There's $5 million that's being repaid to that line of credit this year.
Where's the $20 million coming up to?
It's in the next 5 years. You look at it. There's another $4 million the next year and then the next year.
Mr. Smith?
Through you, this is news to me. I see our finance team are convening. It is something that Mr. Kelly will appear to answer.
Mr. Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah, so just to be clear, there was approval to access up to $20 million in a line of credit for these costs that we're referring to. Only $5 million was taken from that line of credit. So this is the beginnings of repaying that $5 million on the line of credit.
$5 million set aside this year for that line of credit.
The page number that you're looking at for that? No? Okay.
Your Worship, just my
Councillor Sherwood, go ahead.
Yeah, my point was that it didn't cost, I want to make it clear to the public, it did not cost $20 million for the OPP transition. So we want to clear that.
Yeah, correct. Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, that's correct. And $600,000 of the $5 million is what's included within this budget for payment.
And
Deputy
$5
Mayor.
million is the line of credit.
But $5 million is not this year's repayment amount, to be clear. What's that? Okay, perfect. Can you find the page and we'll keep going? Okay. Mr. Kelly, do you have anything else to add? Are you good? Go ahead.
And no, I think what you might be looking at is table 2 on debt. And that table isn't the annual payments of the debt, that's the outstanding amount remaining. So when you see $5 million in 2024, that's $5 million remaining. In 2025, there's $4.3 million remaining and working its way down with those payments.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Was there any additional questions from members of the public? No? Okay, seeing none. Okay, so we're at a point tonight where we need to either start making motions or we can move to 13.1, which is the recommendation to for the 2024 capital budget and 10-year capital forecast to be approved. So I'm looking to council on what you'd like to do. Councillor Sherwood.
Okay, well, I'll start off first with a motion and we'll see where it goes. Going back to the trees. I would like to see those funds of 80,000 reallocated. So my motion is for project, I'm sorry, I don't have the project number in front of me. Page 220, you'll look that up. Okay, so my motion is to reallocate the $80,000 for trees and put it in with to sidewalks.
Is there a seconder to that motion? Okay, Councillor McIntosh, is there further discussion on that motion? Councillor McIntosh.
I just think with the amount of money we're putting into trees, I think we're putting trees before people, and that's not right. I know trees are a great thing, but we've just come through a pandemic. We've got a big tax increase. I just think that, you know, we need to put people first, and sidewalks, that's for people as well. So, thank you.
Okay, is there any additional questions, comments? Councillor Sherwood?
Recorded vote, please.
Sure, we can call a recorded vote. Starting with you then, Councillor Sherwood. Will you call the recorded vote?
If I could have Councillor Sherwood please announce her vote.
Yes.
Councillor Stevens, please.
Yes.
Councillor Andrews.
Yes.
Councillor Prendergast.
No.
Deputy Mayor Taylor.
No.
Mayor Post.
No.
Councillor Andrews. Or I'm sorry, Councillor McIntosh.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so that motion carries. Okay. Was there any additional motions? Councillor McIntosh, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't know if we can put this into two motions or one. It's in regards to the fire department, the master fire plan and car 104 to be held off for another year.
I would separate those motions.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why I would separate them. We heard from the treasurer earlier that right now the fire master plan is able to be partially funded through development charges, which if we push it back, it will not be able to. And all $75,000 will rely on tax levy dollars in order to move it forward in the future. So I would not support moving it out for that simple piece. I could potentially support the removal of car 104 if council's desire was to do so, but I would not support the fire master plan moving. So I would ask that you do it as two separate motions for that purpose. Deputy Mayor?
I'm wondering if you were to do that, Councillor McIntosh, it's not that you would cancel them, you're just moving them, right? Yeah.
So moving the master plan would move it in the budget that it wouldn't be development charge eligible then. It would be a full levy ask if we move it out of 2024 is what the treasurer said. Am I right, Mr. Kelly? Yeah. So that would move it to, if we moved it to 25 or 26, it would be fully dependent on the levy paying for it, not development charges. $25,000 was coming from tax levy and $50,000 from development charges. So if we reallocate it, then that additional $50,000 will have to come from tax levy as well. Okay, so what's your motion then? Go ahead. And do you have a year that you want to move it to, I guess? So start with maybe the truck or the car, the vehicle.
Let's do the master fire plan. And Mike was saying that it's roughly due every 10 years, so that would make it 2025.
So move it out to next year. Okay, was there a seconder for that motion? Deputy Mayor? Any questions or comments on that one? Okay, I will call the vote. All in favor? And any opposed? Would be me, opposed. Okay, so it carries with myself opposed. And then your next motion?
To hold off buying car 104 until next year,
Till 25 as well?
25. Yeah.
Move it to 25. Seconded by Councillor Stevens. Any questions or comments on that item? Okay, all in favor? And opposed? Councillor Prendergast opposed? Okay. Carried. Was there any additional motions coming out of this one? Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, I would like to ask that the outdoor furniture for the pool be removed from the capital budget.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? I will second it to put it on the floor for you. Any questions or comments? I will call the vote. All in favor? And any opposed? Okay, so everybody opposed except for Councillor Sherwood. Was there any additional motions coming out of capital? Councillor Sherwood.
Here I am again. Okay, I'm also going to ask that the table and chairs be removed from the train station.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor McIntosh, questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
I think there's a reason for the tables and chairs being in there. It's going to be used as a meeting space, and you can't have a meeting space without tables and chairs. So the building will sit empty and won't bring any revenue for the town unless we do this.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All in favor? And any opposed? Councillor Andrews, Councillor Prendergast, Deputy Mayor, Mayor Post, and Councillor Stevens are opposed. Okay. Any other motions? Okay. Now my question perhaps to the treasurer would be, with the changes that were made, can you speak to how that would be utilized then?
Sure. Through you, Mayor Post, as I noted earlier, those shifts in projects deferrals doesn't change the levy funding allocation for this capital budget. So the recommendation that's within the report does say, as presented in table 1.0, I would look to the clerk or defer to the clerk on this. Generally, I would have said as amended because these motions have done those amendments, but we would still be directing staff to incorporate $3.5 million into the consolidated budget. And ultimately, you're endorsing the 10-year capital forecast as amended. Does that make sense to you, clerk?
Okay. That clears everything to everybody. Anybody got questions about that? So that has not changed the levy requirement. So our tax levy is still at 4.5%. Just so everybody is aware, nothing has changed from that. So those funds then will be reallocated to reserves or funding projects in other ways, correct?
That's correct. We would use less reserve funding towards other projects and supplement the levy funding over.
Perfect. Thank you. Was there any additional questions or comments? Any additional motions? Deputy Mayor.
So, Your Worship, if you could just indulge me for a minute. So one of the things I don't understand about what we just did with the sidewalks and the trees is we just randomly threw out a number of $80,000. We don't know actually what that's going to do for us. Like, wouldn't it? My feeling is, and it's not, the argument I have is not with sidewalks. I think we should have the sidewalks. I just don't know that, what is that going to do for us, right? So like, to me, if it's 80, shouldn't it be 120? Should it be 160? Like, what is going to make a material difference? And we didn't have that discussion.
And I think because, as Mr. Koslak said, that's in part of the discussions for tomorrow night. So that will be a question for tomorrow when it comes to sidewalks, because that'll be ongoing operating.
But we passed a motion.
Yep. So that motion is going to move that money. Mr. Kelly. Good.
Sure. Through you, Mayor Post, just to add clarity to that motion would provide $80,000 of one-time capital funding towards sidewalks. Tomorrow, we will be discussing a annual allocation of, I believe it's 110 is what we put forward to get it started. That's what tomorrow's about. But tonight is strictly an $80,000 one-time allocation to sidewalk repairs and maintenance.
Yep. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
So again, my question is, and we don't have to talk about it tonight, but maybe it's for tomorrow, is what did that do for us? And was that the right amount? And I think we should have that discussion because I have no idea what that means. I mean, it obviously means improvements to sidewalks, but is that enough?
Mr. Koslak.
Through your worship, we can talk more detail tomorrow, but the cost of sidewalks is roughly $125 per meter, depending on reinstatement. With that, we'd be able to replace roughly 600 meters of sidewalk. So if we can take some of the trip hazards away, it'll be addressing. Right now, we have about 2,700 trip hazards or issues. If we can take 500 or 600 off the list, I think it's going a long way towards addressing our issues.
Thank you, Mr. Koslak. Was there any final motions about any amendments that we want to make to what we see tonight? Okay, then I will ask for the recommendation that's printed. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
If I could, I don't know if you need a motion or not, but I would prefer that we wait and see the whole thing and not pass a budget here tonight. Like, I don't see any benefit. There's no rush. We're still going to hear what's happening tomorrow night. And then, you know, there's time to think about it and move forward in that way.
Is there something that you hope to change? Because the capital budget time would be the time to do that, would be my suggestion.
So I would turn it back on you and say, why are we rushing it? Why are we rushing it through? Like, there's no benefit in passing it tonight.
But if we're not going to amend it, then what are we holding off on would be my additional question. So if that's why I asked if there was any more amendments or motions that were going to be coming out of council. As we've already discussed with the treasurer, the levy amount request is not going to change as a result of anything that we do with the capital budget tonight. We're simply approving that the 3.5 million in capital levy funding in the consolidated budget is approved. Anything that we move at this point is a material shift because it's not going to reduce that levy amount. The changes to the levy amount we're going to see is going to be tomorrow. So if there's changes that we're going to make, I would love to hear the suggestions tonight while we're discussing capital.
I would prefer we waited and thought about it.
I'm okay with that too. We don't have to move that motion tonight. I would turn it over to CAO Smith maybe for some comments.
Yeah, that's certainly an option. It does run the risk and it does complicate things. There's stuff that can happen between now and tomorrow. So we would prefer that you anchor down on the capital budget tonight, and then we can turn our focus to the operating budget, and any of the impacts that you've decided tonight we'll review and be able to speak to tomorrow in terms of the operating budget. Is it 100% don't do it? No. It's certainly our preference that we follow our plan and pass this tonight.
Councillor Sherwood and then Councillor Stevens.
Your worship, I'm prepared to pass this tonight.
Councillor Stevens.
Your worship, I have to agree with Deputy Mayor Taylor. I don't see the rush, and we digested a lot tonight. And although we're not going to come back and probably change some things, I would like to wait.
Okay. Additional comments from anybody? CAO Smith?
Yeah, I would just like a minute to confer with the clerk on what the process of deferring it is. So if you just give us a second.
Yep, no problem. CAO Smith? Oh, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Post, if council wishes to defer the decision to tomorrow night, if I could just have a motion to that effect, please.
I can do that. Can I have a motion to defer the passing of the capital budget till tomorrow? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Stevens. All in favor, or further questions first? Questions, comments? No? All in favor? And any opposed? Councillor Prendergast, you guys saw the vote, okay? Okay, so then I will move forward with the recommendation that the 2024 capital program as presented in capital budget table 1.0 be approved, and that staff be directed to incorporate 3.5 million in capital levy funding within the 2024 consolidated budget, and that council endorse the updated 10-year capital forecast 2024 to 2033 as presented. Can I have a motion, please? Oh, yeah.
Sorry, through you, Mayor Post, if I could just have you add the word as amended to the first sentence, just so that we can incorporate the amendments. And then
capital budget table 1.0 be approved as amended.
And then again to the last sentence, just removing as presented and changing that to as amended.
Perfect. As amended. Okay, thank you. Councillor Sherwood, seconded by Councillor McIntosh. Questions or comments? Councillor Stevens.
Recorded vote, please.
Sure. That will start with you then, Councillor Stevens, and The clerk will call that. Deputy Mayor.
So just so everybody understands now, so if you want a recorded vote and you're not happy with it, you're going to be voting against the capital budget. So you're going to say that you don't want to pass it.
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood what was.
Yeo Smith.
Yeah, I think that is a very important concept. It feels like we're overcomplicating and we're running the risk of doing something. This is what happens when you try and do things on the fly. You know, I just want to make sure that what the deputy mayor said is what people understand, that you voted to vote on the budget tonight. They not postpone it to tomorrow. If you vote tonight, no, then you're voting not to support the capital budget. It's a very important vote.
Yep. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Madam Clerk, it sounds like we've got a recorded vote called by, Councillor Stevens.
I'll withdraw my,
You're withdrawing your recorded vote?
yes.
Okay. Thank you. Was there any final questions or comments? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Was there any notices of motion prior to, there was no notice of motion prior to meeting. Is there any notices of motion at tonight's meeting? Seeing none. Any announcements from council? Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, I'm going to put another plug in about Theatre Orangeville's Cinderella pantomime. I'll tell you, I had an opportunity to see it and see the dress rehearsal and see the live performance. And I can't express enough how this community has to go to buy tickets for it. It is an absolute joy, pleasure, fun-filled evening. And you know what? Our little theater, the cost of those shows are very reasonable compared to going down to the city. So you know what? Please get out and get your tickets. It's a fabulous show.
It is fabulous and written by our own local David Nairn, co-written by our local David Nairn. Any other announcements? Okay, we have already had question period. Our bylaw recommendation is that the bylaws listed below be read 3 times and finally passed, which is just our confirmatory bylaw confirming the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Orangeville at its council capital budget meeting held on December 4th, 2023. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Prendergast. Any questions or comments? All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And a motion to adjourn. Councillor Prendergast and Deputy Mayor, all in favor? And that is carried. Have a good evening. We'll see everybody tomorrow.